101 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September 10th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we've got some sunny skies, 12 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 11. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A man is in stable condition after an early morning shooting near the airport. Police say they were called to a collision on Leicester Street near Bank in the Airport Parkway, where they found a 29-year-old man behind the wheel of a vehicle with gunshot wounds. This happened around 2:15 this morning. The Guns and Gangs unit asking for anyone with any information or dash cam footage to come forward. Anyone with information has to contact police or Crime Stoppers. Now, those area roads were closed for hours this morning. Police say in the last 10 to 15 minutes that they have now reopened to traffic. Advanced polls now open. Our Carl Hansky is asking voters if what they saw during last night's debates helped them make up their minds.
Most commuters I've talked to did not watch the debate for various reasons.
I slept through the whole thing.
I was kind of tired last night, so I didn't really have the time to sit down and, watch all that.
I would have watched it yesterday, but I didn't have time.
Some, like this woman, did not need to take the time.
I'd already made up my mind.
Nothing's going to change it.
I don't think so.
And for those like her who already know who they're voting for, advance polls are open the next 4 days starting today from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Check out your voter information card delivered in the mail to find your advance polling station or use the voter information service online. I'm Carl Hansky.
With just 10 days to go before Election Day on September the 20th, federal party leaders back on the campaign trail today after throwing proverbial stones at each other in two back-to-back leaders' debates. Heading into them, polls suggested the Liberals and Conservatives were locked in a dead heat, with smaller parties poised to determine which of the main parties emerges victorious. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says for the good of all Canadians, he'd be willing to cooperate with other parties in a minority government. He was responding to a report that Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet would rule out propping up either a Liberal or Conservative minority government for any length of time in the House of Commons. Statistics Canada says the economy added 90,000 jobs in August, the third consecutive monthly increase. The unemployment rate fell to 7.1% for the month, compared with 7.5% back in July, bringing the rate to the lowest level since the onset of the pandemic last year. Gains were concentrated in full-time work and in the hard-hit service sector, led by gains in accommodation and food services. Statistics Canada says gains in the service sector pushed employment there back to pre-pandemic levels for the first time, although there's still some areas that are lagging, such as retail and food services. University of Toronto nursing professor Elizabeth Peter says healthcare workers are suffering from what she calls moral injury. The Ontario Hospital Association has also used the term, which is applied to soldiers fielding an extreme violation of their moral values, to describe the effect on frontline staff after several protests outside hospitals in the province. Peter says exhausted healthcare workers are trying to save the lives of unvaccinated patients against the backdrop of protesters opposed to scientifically proven vaccines. Now let's take a look at the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Sun and cloud with a brisk northwest wind today. The high 21 degrees. Tonight partly cloudy near 10, and tomorrow warmer with a southwest wind. Sun and cloud for the most part, although some rain will move in Saturday night. 25 tomorrow will feel like 30. Some clearing on Sunday after some morning showers. For today, the high 21.
City News time is 9:03. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Gentlemen, we have to wrap this segment. All right, we are moving on. We are moving on, leaders.
Since I'm many minutes behind everybody else, there should be some
Mr. Blanchet, you have had every opportunity to jump in. All right. Remember, this is affordability. And Mr. Trudeau, I'm sorry, we're out of time now, sir.
I don't know if there's time. Intro.
Not really, but quickly. Time now, sir.
Responding to people, can I answer Rosie's question directly?
You have 5 seconds, sir. Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. We are now moving to the open debate
I just have a question for Mr. Trudeau, I believe.
I'm very
if you don't
sorry.
mind. I don't think we should let him off the hook. I think we would all agree.
I got a little mixed up there.
make the right choice.
Leaders,
so we
that
can
is
move
it.
forward together.
We're out of time. Evan, thank you. Leaders, thank you for your participation tonight. That's it for the English Language Leaders Debate. Voting Day is September 20th.
Well, good morning, Ottawa. Wow. There's some of the highlights from last night. My goodness. My goodness. That moderator last night, by the way, Shachi Curl, I guess you either loved her or you hated her. I loved her. I thought she did a great job. Great job last night. She's from the polling firm Angus Reid. She was the moderator last night, and she had her work cut out for her, that's for sure. Let me start off by saying that there's something's wrong this morning. I think David knows where I'm coming from. I pull into the Tim Hortons here on Walkley, okay, right by the station here on Thurston Road and Walkley. First of all, the three older gentlemen that are always there, and they're talking politics, right? Because they've got these faces on that they're right into it. They got every wrinkle possible on their faces just going crazy. They're yelling at each other. They're talking politics every single morning, guaranteed. They're not there. They're not at the Tim Hortons. I mean, that makes my day. I pull in there. It makes my day. And what else makes my day is I pull up to that drive-through and the lovely woman. Hey, David, isn't she lovely, right? I think she calls you honey, like you're there for 30 seconds and she calls you honey like 17 times.
She's excellent.
I love her.
Great operation over.
Yeah, I love her. Good morning, honey. Hi, honey. What can I get you, honey? Honey, what can I get you? Well, you know what? I'd like, one of your bacon egg sandwiches there and a sausage sandwich as well with the egg. I'm sorry, honey. No sausage. It's 7 a.m. How are you out of sausage already? You're Tim Hortons. And then a follow-up. Okay, that's fine. Okay, give me the bacon, and give me 2 hash browns. I'm sorry, honey. We're out of hash browns. It's 7 a.m. at Tim Hortons, and you're out of hash browns. How is that possible? By the way, next week is Smile Cookie Week. Let you know, and I'll give you the details on Monday. But we're getting some Smile cookies here at the station, just to let everybody know. Okay, so it's going to be a good Monday morning. Let me just enjoy a little of the... Are they a sponsor, by the way? Can I show what Tim...
If they're not, they should be after this.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I've gone off the rails. And what to watch last night, okay? We're all enthralled with the... Okay, enthralled is probably too kind of a word for the English debate last night. But we're tuned in. But last night, okay, you've got the English language debate. You've got the opening of the NFL season. You got the Bucks versus Cowboys, which goes down to the last seconds. The Bucks kick a field goal to win it in the final seconds. Exciting. And then you got Canadian tennis phenom Leylah Fernandez. For those of you that didn't watch, I mean, she is such a pleasure. You see some of the athletes, in tennis that, they're angry and they're throwing their racket and they're smashing things and they're stomping all over the court. No, she's like dancing throughout the whole match. It was just unbelievable to watch. I'm flipping back and forth between the English language debate, the Bucks-Cowboys game. I got the U.S. Open, and then you got the Toronto Blue Jays with a 4-game sweep against the New York Yankees. I didn't know what to choose. Anyway, I recorded the English language debate. David and I were texting back and forth during the debate. At one point, I had to tell him, I got to step away for a moment. I didn't really step away. I was just switching channels to see what else was happening in the NFL and the U.S. Open and the Toronto Blue Jays. It was exciting. So you just heard off the top. English language federal leaders debate. It's in the books. If you did not stay up to 11 p.m. to watch that, congratulations, because it was a bleep show. Let me just put it that way, okay? Oh, my. In 45 seconds, tell us what you think about one of the most important issues on the minds of Canadians in 45 seconds. Go. I mean, try that yourself. I want you to set a timer, you at home, And just, let's do it at dinner tonight. Why don't we do a family game, everybody, tonight, okay? Do a family game. You're at dinner tonight. Everybody's back to school. The English language debate went last night. I want you to sit at the table, enjoy some time with family, and then set that clock at 45 seconds and ask each of your family members something about, affordability. Okay, like if it's my daughter, Chloe, affordability, 45 seconds, go. Max, my son, climate change in 45 seconds, go. Okay? COVID-19 recovery, leadership, accountability, reconciliation. You all get 45 seconds. Try that tonight. I guarantee you're going to have a good time. Strong consensus in the media, by the way, and in all the pundits in the Twitter sphere this morning, that the big loser last night was the format of the debate itself. Why does it sound like I'm a broken record saying that? That's exactly what we said about the French language debate. I mean, at least there was a little more. I think there was a little more back and forth last night, at least. It was confused at times, disjointed, kind of like a game show, I think that's where the 45 seconds comes in. Maybe we should just turn it into a game show. And, voters at home can grade each leader, and it's like $500 per vote, and then it goes to charity. Let's do something like that. At least make it meaningful. Five themes last night that the leaders had to answer several questions on, but they were only given 45 seconds, as I said. Then there were periods of what they called open debate, which lasted a whopping 4 minutes. So each of the 5 leaders had less than a minute to go head-to-head with their opponents. Shachi Curl from the polling firm Angus Reid, as I mentioned earlier, was the moderator for the debate. They also brought in some big celebrities, some other members of the public, and then 4 big-name TV journalists, not named Derick, Fage, or Rob Snow, or David Smith. From major news networks, they were guest moderators. They got to ask some questions. Often the questions themselves were longer and more detailed than the answers that they had to give in 45 seconds. Like, the journalists asked longer questions than the time you had to respond to the question. A hot mess. Nevertheless, we watched the whole thing, so you didn't have to. And then we've compiled some highlights for you, okay? And by we, I mean David, because I did nothing. Well, I know I did my own research, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a tech guy. I can't put together these fancy musicals that David did off the top of the show. Erin O'Toole. Okay, let's get to some of these. Erin O'Toole was pressed on his party's record on issues like abortion and LGBTQ rights. O'Toole defended himself as a new leader of a new conservative party. Here's what he had to say.
Tell me, how can voters trust that it's you and not your caucus that will be in charge of a conservative policy agenda?
Well, thank you, Ms. Curl. I'm a new leader of the Conservative Party, and we have a plan to get the country back on its feet after a difficult 18 months in this crisis. I'm a pro-choice ally to the LGBTQ community. That comes from my service in the military, where I served alongside people from all backgrounds, all orientations, putting the country first. National leadership on mental health. So is it you, sir, or your caucus that's driving the bus? I am driving the bus to make sure we get this country back on track.
I am driving the bus. There you go. All right, let's get into some other. Green Party leader Annamie Paul went head-to-head with Justin Trudeau on his reputation as a fake feminist, invoking the names of high-profile women Liberal MPs who have left the party in the past 2 years. Let's listen in on this one.
I have said before, and I'll say again tonight, that I do not believe that Mr. Trudeau is a real feminist. A feminist doesn't continue to push strong women out of his party when they are just seeking to serve. And I will say their names tonight and thank them. Thank you, Jane Philpott. Thank you, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Thank you, Selena Cesar-Chavez. And I'm here tonight thanks to the work that you have done.
Yes. And there was a rebuttal, by the way. Things got a little heated when Trudeau took a shot at the Green Party's own internal troubles. Have a listen.
Form in the last 18 years. The Liberal Party has never had a woman lead it. I think it's time for the party to examine its priorities.
I think, Ms. Hall, you'll perhaps understand that I won't take lessons on caucus management from you.
Pow! Pow! Ho ho! That's a good one. All right, let's move on to the climate file. Oh my God, did we spend too long on the climate file? David will tell you, I'm a granola crunching, sandal wearing, tree hugging guy. I mean, honestly, I am. I've planted over 150 trees at my cottage. You know, my wife and I try to have zero footprint. We don't use our air conditioning at home. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on with me. But this amount of time on climate change, when we're responsible for less than 2% of greenhouse emissions in the world, this is a global problem. Canadians obviously passionate for it. I really don't understand why we are so desperately passionate about it when we need all leaders to get involved. Anyway, on the climate file, Jagmeet Singh, who otherwise put up a pretty forgettable performance in the debate. I mean, if there was a winner, I don't know if there was a winner, but if there was a loser, Jagmeet Singh. Terrible performance last night. Anyway, he had one of his better moments when he pitched himself and the NDP as the only party with a real plan on climate change.
Get emissions down,
Mr. Toole,
and get our energy to market.
These workers need a plan that's going to create jobs for the future, and that's a responsibility of government. We've seen 6 years of Mr. Trudeau, and workers can't afford another 4 years. What we need to do is invest in a diversified economy, clean energy. We need to electrify transportation. We need to invest in retrofitting homes and buildings. We need to create good jobs for workers
plan
now.
Oh, boy. Probably his only good moment last night. I almost felt bad for him at times. I mean, the first 3 questions that he was asked last night, he didn't even answer them. He just went off on his own. And I know politicians do that all the time, but it was challenging to listen to. We've got some other clips. I've gone over time here because I'm ranting myself, and David has prepared all this fantastic material. I apologize, David, but we can use some of these throughout the rest of the show. There's no doubt about that. And guess who's coming up next? Oh boy. You know him, you love him. Hall of Fame Ottawa broadcaster, author of Common Sense for a Wounded Nation. After last night's debate, I think we're all feeling wounded. Lowell Grain coming up after the break. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow right here on Rogers TV and City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be let's say 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expansive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Oh boy, we're going to have some fun right now. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow. Wow. Those debates last night, eh? By the way, let's get your thoughts on the debates in the 10 o'clock hour. After the 10 o'clock news, give us a call, 613-750-1310. Let's talk about last night's debates. Let's talk maybe some winners and losers. Hopefully you don't feel like you were one of the losers by listening in on that and watching it last night. Let's get the opinion of one of Ottawa's greatest broadcasting icons, Hall of Fame Ottawa broadcaster, author of Common Sense for a Wounded Nation, Lowell Green, joining me. Lowell, how are you?
I'm a happy boy this morning.
How are you?
Well, the Blue Jays, as you've already stated, swept the New York Yankees 4 straight games, and very clearly, I'm surprised that you haven't declared a winner. I mean, it's very clear who the winner was.
Okay, well, tell me, Lowell, who's the
Erin
winner?
O'Toole. I mean, there's really only 2 combatants that mattered last night.
That's true.
Justin Trudeau and Erin O'Toole. And very clearly, Justin Trudeau did not win. I mean, he looked terrible.
Why do you think? What makes you say that?
Well, because, I mean, anybody who watched it would know that. He was flustered. He was angry. If you can think of one question that he actually answered, I'd be very, very surprised.
That's a good point.
So very clearly, if Trudeau lost, which he very clearly did, and everybody seems to agree with that, then very clearly Erin O'Toole won. But, I think that people are a little bit confused. Debates of that nature really don't have that much to do with policy. There really isn't time to explain policy. They've been talking about policy now for the past
Lowell, are you saying 45 seconds is not enough time to explain policy?
Well, no, but it's not about policy. It's about personality.
Right.
And really, the job of those taking part is to make themselves as likable and believable as possible.
True.
And I think that once again, we see that it was O'Toole that won this. He came across as very calm, very, very cool, very collected, and very prime ministerial. And that was his job, and he did the job very well. I must tell you that even the CBC very, very reluctantly admits that he was the winner last night.
Yeah?
There's no question
No,
about
I
it.
tend to agree with you. I'd say the biggest loser was Jagmeet Singh. I thought he was absolutely terrible.
He didn't perform very well.
Well, he was flustered throughout. He looked like he looked like a high school student.
He wasn't that relevant last night. I say there were only 2 combatants. The others were just really a sideshow. Now, I must tell you that Ms. Paul impressed me greatly.
Me too.
She comes across as a very, very kind, very, very intelligent, very decent, very principled person. And I'm glad that you played the clip. She really landed a very telling blow on Trudeau, calling him a fake feminist. And not only that, but spelled out that you used the names of 3 women that he had badly abused. But very clearly, she's not ready to lead a party. I mean, some of the idea that somehow or other that we could just tomorrow abandon all all fossil fuels, which supply about 20-25% of all our economic, the economy in this country is just absolute nonsense. But she's a very decent person. I came across very clearly as that. But once again, no question whatsoever. I have to, as a little bit of an aside, Rosie Barton, who I detest from the bottom of my heart, or what's left of my heart.
I love your honesty, Lowell.
Pardon?
I said I love your honesty.
I just detest her. Well, I mean, let's face it, she was supposed to have been, during the last debate with Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau, Rosie Barton was supposed to be an unbiased moderator, and all the time she is suing the Conservative Party. She's there as a moderator, supposed to be unbiased, and she's suing the Conservative. So after the debate last night, I just love her. Oh, God, what a woman. So after the debate last night, when very clearly Trudeau looked terrible for the most part, you know what her comment was? Well, I think the format boxed him in.
What? Why just him? I mean, it boxed all of us in.
There was a four-person panel, including two very staunch Liberal supporters, and even they were shaking their heads. I mean, it wasn't the format that boxed Trudeau in. It was some of the things that he had done and not done. I thought one of the most telling blows from O'Toole was, and actually Trudeau tried to interrupt him here, but he said, Mr. Trudeau, or words to this effect, Mr. Trudeau, you're a I'm going to guy. I'm going to guy. I'm going to do that, but you never get around to doing it. But you're always going to. And this, I think, this struck a very resonant chord with people. I think a lot of people feel that. I mean, and there's no question that many of his responses last night were that. Well, we're going to. Yeah. We understand we can do better. We're going to. And not only that, but you know what? The strongest thing, the meanest thing that Trudeau could come up with against O'Toole was that he wasn't forcing all of his candidates to be vaccinated. This seems to be the biggest sin that Erin O'Toole has committed. You're not forcing all of your candidates to be vaccinated. And by the way, you look like Harper. I mean, he still raises Harper. I mean, people everywhere across the country, when they hear this, they shake their heads. Harper, you've been in power for 6 years, you bugger.
What did you think about the themes? I was just saying earlier, I don't know if you heard me, Lowell, but I'm a bit of a granola cruncher. Climate change is important to me, but for this to be the top of importance for Canadians, I guess it surprises me when we're responsible for less than 2% of greenhouse gas emissions, and we spend all this time talking climate change when there are so many issues on the table.
Yeah, I agree. 1.6% is all we're responsible for, and our forests and our water soak up far more than that. But I mean, very clearly, if you're going to get the so-called progressive vote, the woke vote, you've got to be a climate change, activist. So that's just playing to the audience. There's no question. I must tell you something else. I was surprised. Up until yesterday, we were told that Afghanistan and the two Michaels were off limits, but somehow or other, I guess somebody must have applied a lot of pressure, because they did get into the Afghanistan fiasco, the way that we cut and run and abandoned thousands of people over there, and we did get into the two Michaels. So that was a change of heart at the very last minute, which I was glad, because I mean, it's a very major issue. And once again, Trudeau stumbled and fumbled and really couldn't answer. The one line, I guess, that's being quoted is him lobbing tomatoes or something, but whatever the hell that means. But essentially, he looked really, really flustered last night. As I say, if he lost, then very clear, no matter what you think about the performance of the others, if Trudeau lost, which he did, and everybody agrees, that means that Erin O'Toole won. And it's about look, you know what, Derick? We need a change, okay?
Always appreciate.
The record of this government is abysmal, right from vaccinations to the two Michaels to Afghanistan. I mean, the scandals, et cetera, et cetera. It's time. We need the change. Come on.
Always appreciate your insight and your opinions, Lowell. Thanks so much for joining.
By the way, I agree with you. I thought that the moderator, whatever the hell her name is, I thought she did a good job last night.
Shachi Curl. That's.
I thought she did a really really good job.
I agree. Yeah, no, she was great.
Even pinned Trudeau's ears to the post a couple of times.
Yeah, that's for sure. Lowell, thanks so much for joining me.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hope to talk to you again next week. By the way, I'll be back again next week filling in for Rob. This is Derick Fage filling in on the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, the 10th of September. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, it's 14 degrees, partly cloudy skies. It's 13 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news right now. A man in stable condition after an early morning shooting near the airport. Police say they were called to a collision on Leicester Street where they found a 29-year-old man behind the wheel of a vehicle with gunshot wounds. It happened around 2:15 this morning. The Guns and Gangs unit of the Ottawa Police asking for anyone with any information or dash cam footage to come forward with a tip. The Leeds Grenville Lanark District Health Unit operating 3 walk-in clinics for a COVID-19 vaccine clinic today. They're being held at the Lanark Connectwell Community Health Centre on Robertson Road from 10 to 3, the Brockville Health Unit on Laurier Boulevard, and the Smiths Falls Memorial Centre. Both Moderna and Pfizer doses are available. Frontline hospital workers from across the province, including here from Smiths Falls and in Ottawa, will be in Toronto today demanding a fair new contract. Registered nurses, personal support workers, cleaners, and many others will be in front of the Ontario Hospital Association's head office from noon until 1. The union representing hospital workers say their members feel devalued by their employers and by the provincial government for cutting their salaries under the wage cap policy. An advanced polling for the federal election now officially underway. Check your voter cards to see where you need to go. Advanced voting today, tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday from 9 until 9. Voting day is the 20th of September. City News time is 9:33. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob today and next week. And boy, oh boy, there is no lack of content for this show. We've got the debates. Last night, of course, we had the 2 French language debates, the only English language debate, which is disappointing, quite frankly. I'd like to see, I would like to see a minimum of 2 English language and 2 French language debates. That's for sure. And something else that we're always talking about lately on this show is vaccines and vaccine mandates. Federal and provincial governments, private businesses, many of Canada's biggest banks have announced plans to implement mandatory vaccination policies for many of their returning staff. These vaccine mandates require their employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19, but do employers have the right to impose such mandates? What if employees refuse? A lot of people are asking these questions. I don't have the answers, but hopefully our next guest does. I am joined by Janice Payne, Ottawa employment lawyer with Nelligan Law. How are you this morning, Janice?
Just fine, Derick. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And this must be something I'm sure you and your colleagues are talking about quite frequently when it comes to mandates and labor laws. So maybe you can walk us through this. Are employers, do they have the right to impose such mandates?
Employers have an obligation under the law to provide a healthy workplace for their employees. So that's what this is all about. That's what the vaccination policies that everybody's talking about are linked to. It's this duty to provide a safe workplace. So the short answer, the best answer that we've are able to come up with at this point in time, and please remember this is an evolving situation. The facts and the law are changing rapidly here. And so what I say today may not be what I say to you next week.
Right.
But our sense of things at the moment is that, yes, employers have a duty to provide a safe workplace. Requiring that their staff be vaccinated is something that they can do and probably should do. Given the pandemic we're dealing with, in order to provide a safe workplace. We think these policies, if properly drafted, and if they allow for appropriate exemptions under human rights legislation, for example, if somebody has a medical reason, a disability, and is unable to take the shots, there has to be an exemption for people like that. But if the policies are properly drafted, they are probably enforceable. They are more easily enforced in workplaces dealing with vulnerable people.
Right.
And we've seen that already. But many employers are now looking at these, and I think we're going to see more and more of them in all sorts of different workplaces.
Janice, historically, have we ever seen an issue like this come up? Like, is there anything we can look at previously that tells us that this is something that would work legally?
There is certainly some history of vaccination requirements during in flu season, for example. There are some labor cases that basically support the right of an employer in a hospital setting or other vulnerable setting, insisting that staff be properly vaccinated. So there is some guidance in the past, but we have never lived through anything like this. This is way beyond what we've dealt with in the past, as we all know. And so these cases are of limited guidance, frankly, and we've never had to go as far as thinking about vaccination policies in all sorts of workplaces.
Is this perhaps why a lot of small businesses have strongly requested, different levels of government to actually make these decisions instead of the decisions, being landing in their laps?
Absolutely. It would be so much easier if we had some stronger direction from government, public health. It's coming. Employers do need to keep an eye on what public health guidelines are in their particular part of the country. It's coming. Public health is strongly recommending vaccination policies in Toronto and Ottawa, but that falls short of requiring them, except in certain sectors that we know about. So, yes, it would be easier for employers if they could simply just apply the law and not wait for courts to deal with cases and get guidance that way. But unfortunately, we don't have enough of that.
Right. And we always see, Janice, that court cases are certainly backed up in this country. from your perspective and those of your colleagues, is there a concern that, some of these cases could go to that far and start taking up the court's time in these kinds of situations?
I think we expect it to happen.
Really?
I think we expect it to happen. That's right. I think we'll see it first perhaps in the unionized environment. There may be some faster decisions there, at least at an initial level. But these cases could go through appeals. We can't wait for that. Employers do have this obligation. They are looking for guidance, and as lawyers, we're giving them that guidance. It's very important for people wrestling with these issues on both sides to get advice.
Right.
The correct course of action will be different depending upon the particular working environment, the facts at play, and so on. So these are difficult issues that will be resolved differently from one workplace to another, probably until we get some clearer direction.
Yeah, and I wonder and imagine that some of these cases perhaps go to the Human Rights Tribunal, correct?
Oh, they may very well. Because there is no question, and I think that's broadly accepted, that individuals who have a medical reason that can be supported with a medical note not to take a vaccination should be exempted. A religious belief that is sincerely held will be enough to excuse someone. So, yes, we're going to see human rights complaints, I imagine, and some decisions from human rights tribunals.
What if employees refuse? What do you see happening in that kind of situation?
My instincts are that most employers are going to try to solve the situation without immediately moving to termination. I don't think if policies are properly drafted, for example, they're going to give people who refuse perhaps the option to be tested regularly instead. Perhaps they won't have the same access to the workplace as others. There will be options that will be looked at to see if they are workable. There may be education programs. Certainly there's recommendations that employers think about that. Provide some education to your employees so that they understand the importance of this. Give them some time. Perhaps a paid or an unpaid leave to think about this and to get the vaccinations.
Janice, is there any? Go ahead.
There will be a number of things that employers try before simply moving to termination.
Yeah, I wonder, is there any difference between, a public service employee and a private sector employee? Do you see any difference in those two situations?
One big difference is that much of the public service is unionized. Now, much of the private sector is too.
Right.
And certainly there's a difference between a unionized environment and a non-unionized environment. The advice I'd have for anyone dealing with a unionized environment, the individuals would be to look to your union for help and support and guidance. The unions are all wrestling with this issue, just as employers are. So, yes, there are differences when you're dealing with a unionized environment. There's a collective agreement at play, and that has to be complied with.
Janice, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Rob Snow Show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is Janice Payne, Ottawa employment lawyer. Great conversation. This is going to be something, and you just heard Janice's concern that, some of these things are going to go to the courts. I want to remind you, by the way, that the Talk Back Hour today, after the 10 o'clock news, is the Friday free-for-all. And, of course, I'm sure many of you want to give your opinions on last night's English debate. You heard Lowell. He felt that Erin O'Toole was the clear winner last night. I tend to agree with him. I also felt that Jagmeet Singh was the clear loser last night, which is unfortunate for him because, certainly the polls have shown that as far as leadership goes, he ranks quite highly with many Canadians. But boy, oh boy, he really struggled. Not even just the English language debate; he also struggled in the French language debate as well. It was almost awkward at times last night watching him. So if you want to get your opinion here on the Rob Snow Show, don't forget 613-750-1310. That is after the 10 o'clock news. And we're going to keep talking about the debate. We're going to get a bit of a recap coming up after the break. We've got Tim Powers, chair of Summa Strategies, going to be joining us. Who won? Who lost? Any surprises? Tim will share his opinion on that. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. You're listening to The Rob Snow Show and watching The Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store, a popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Oh boy, we are having some fun on the Rob Snow Show today because the English debate, the one and only, by the way, English debate, which is very disappointing. Why only one? I mean, this is our chance to meet the leaders and hear from them. A minimum of two. I'd love to see 3 debates. That's my opinion, but you've got your own opinion, which, by the way, in about 15 minutes' time, we want to hear from you. 750-1310. It's the Friday free-for-all on the Talkback Hour, so give us a call. Let's talk about anything you want. Anything goes, but I'm sure many of you want to share your opinion on what happened during last night's debate, winners and losers. Well, let's talk more about that right now as well, because I'm joined by Tim Powers, chair of Summa Strategies. Tim, how are you this morning?
She's been a long time since we talked, Derick. You, Rob, taking Friday off like a good Cape Breton.
That's right. How are you, Tim? Yeah, it has been a long time.
I am all right. Like everybody else, trying to figure out if there was anything that really happened last night. There, it's still a bit baffling.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Did you see? Lowell Green a bit earlier on in the show felt that Erin O'Toole was the clear winner. In your mind, was there a clear winner last night?
I don't think there was a clear winner. Let me jump on the bandwagon with everybody else. I think the clear loser was the structure of the debate. It was chaotic and unwieldy and didn't allow, if the purpose of these debates, Derick, is to allow Canadians to get a feel for their leaders and the issues that they're talking about, because again, like all good Canadians, they tried to do way too much there last night, and that didn't happen. So I think to Lowell's point, O'Toole has gotten out of these debates probably with not as much bruising as Justin Trudeau would like, and in a better stead than maybe he thought he would get out, because there wasn't the ability to attack him. I wouldn't describe him as the winner, but he certainly didn't lose. Trudeau had the most bruising, to be expected, as the main target in all of this, and he looked just so panicked, and part of that was the format. My goodness, when the Prime Minister wants to speak faster, he speaks really freaking fast, and it's really hard to figure out what he's saying, and there's so many talking points coming out, you don't know what's going on. That was wild, and I've seen that before from him. I don't know how the viewers will interpret all of that. I love Mr. Blanchet. I hate the Black, but I love Mr. Blanchet. He's the caustic, sometimes unruly uncle in the back there. Well, hey, wait about me for now. You haven't given me time. He added some humanity to it. So anyway, sorry, I gave you a long answer, which I would have never been able to give in that debate last night.
Listen, I got 3 hours on the show. They don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from my guests. My goodness. I would say, you mentioned the format as a big loser. I would say that was sort of 1A, and 1B for me was Jagmeet Singh. I felt was just terrible. His performance was awful. He was flustered. First 3 questions thrown at him, he didn't even answer the questions. The moderator had to remind him what the question was. I think he lost some votes. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, well, and you read. Yeah, he was better in 2019. I think that's right, Derick. So then people now have seen him a second time. He as every poll shows, he's the most likable person among the group. He didn't use that, I think, to his advantage. And he has weak answers on, and I think Trudeau and O'Toole went after him on this. Well, you're going to do this, that, and other thing. Where's your cost of platform? He didn't have that. And I thought Rosie Barton kind of skewered him, too, when he talked about what he was going to do as it related to housing and how many seniors would bear the burden of the cost of sales of their homes. He was left wanting on that one, and that could cause him some trouble in BC, because there are a lot of people who have homes that they do eventually want to sell because it's the retirement nest egg.
Yeah.
They consider voting NDP, and now hear Mr. Singh say, well, you know what, you got to do your part here too to help the young people, and I know you really want to do that. Well, if you're 69, 70, 75, looking to sell your home, get a little windfall and retire, that might make you happy.
Yeah, and Tim, those we know are that demographic. They go out and vote, right?
Yeah. They vote. So I don't know where the hell we sit today, Derick. You never really know what happens in a debate, if anything happens for 2 or 3 days in terms of polling numbers. Going into the debate, everything was effectively tied up.
Right.
Conservative momentum seemingly was parked. The Liberals hadn't regained momentum, but they had stopped the fall. There was nothing there that would suggest there would be a dramatic shift. And maybe there was. Maybe people saw something in there that we haven't talked about yet that will move things along. I just don't know what the hell it is. Maybe that makes me useless as a pundit. Don't ask that.
Well, yeah. Listen, we're 10 days out. So what? Okay, let's the debate aside. Moving forward. let's just talk about the three main parties here, right? I mean, it is, by the way, Enemy Paul, I will say, impressed me last night. I thought she was excellent. But we're 10 days out. What should the priorities be for the three main parties?
Well, pray heavily or drink heavily, depending on where you find yourself. Once you've gotten past that, though, I think what you're going to see is heavy advertising among the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. I mean, I'll admit something, Derick. I didn't watch the whole debate because I was watching not even the tennis game, but the Cowboys and
me too. It was. Listen, last night was crazy, Tim.
The first half, I was like, that's pretty good, NDP. They were buying ads in that game. So heavy advertising, focused touring, and try and take what you got from this debate in terms of how the audience reacted and drive your message on all of that. I mean, I think the three main leaders are in Ontario today. I suspect they're going to spend more time here, BC, and parts of Quebec, and work to. And it's going to get nastier. I suspect you're going to get. I think the Liberals will go after Mr. O'Toole on childcare. Mr. O'Toole is going to go after the Liberals on accountability. Mr. Singh is going to go after both of them on don't believe what you hear. And I suspect we're minutes away, Derick, from Justin Trudeau going further on what he said last night. Never mind voting for the NDP to stop those dastardly Tory barbarians storming the gates. Vote for me.
Yeah, I wanted to know what you mentioned it. Housing. What do you think of the Conservative attacks on capital gains tax? Should they go harder on that?
Yeah, well, again, there's a big war going on. I don't know if it's phony or not, but I think they would get a lot of support if the Liberals truly are going to alter the capital gains taxation regime around homes. There would be, again, a lot of Canadians who would not want to see that happen given what the wealth they have in their homes, and wealth is just with quotes around it because it's not really that much, means their retirement.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm one of those people, I'm in my 50s now, and that's certainly part of our retirement plan is to eventually sell our house and use some of those funds for retirement. I wonder, it just seems to me that would be a disaster for the Liberals if they, if they're going to put something like that on the table. Wouldn't every party just go like hard on it continually?
Well, the NDP may not. They may applaud it based on what Mr. Singh is saying, and you don't want to create this generational war, right? There's playing off voters, but a lot of the millennials and Generation Z and others will, at some point, inherit familial wealth or be given the opportunity. And the Liberals have pushed out hard to say, no, we're not doing this. No, we're not doing this. Mr. O'Toole cited the page in the Liberal policy book. So, again, I suspect there'll be a lot of fact-checking going on and a lot of no and yesing around this because it's been central to Canadian identity, as you know. If you can't, the way you save money is you invest it in your house. If you're fortunate enough to have another savings, great. But your house is what helps you retire. It's what looks after you when you go forward. So you're getting right at the symbolism of generational divide.
Well, it's a real Canadian phenomenon, right? If you look at other countries around the world, in particular, European countries, housing isn't a big deal, right? We're addicted to housing in this country for some reason. Everybody wants to own instead of rent. I mean, my financial advisor told me he so often he recommends to his clients, don't buy a home. It's not a great investment, of course, until you sell it, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But then you met on the other side of this, which is a real challenge. You have young people today who can't afford to buy houses, but is the solution to the problem preventing the sale of houses to those who need to sell them right now? I mean, it doesn't seem to be broadly well thought out by all parties.
Right. Tim, real pleasure hearing from you again after all these years. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good, and good to talk to you, Derick, and tell Rob to get off his butt, for God's sake. You can't take every freaking Friday off.
I'll talk to him. I know he's off next week, too. I'll talk to him.
Oh, my God, he's having the Cape Breton special. All right, talk to you, Derick.
All right, take care. That's Tim Powers, chair of Summa Strategies. Coming up after the break, it's the 10 o'clock hour. You know what that means? It's the talk-back hour. It's the Friday free-for-all. Let's talk about some of the highlights, maybe some of the lowlights from last night's English debate. Anything goes. Well, almost anything. 613-750-1310 is our number. Give us a call. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's September 10th. It's Friday. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, 14 degrees, a mix of sun and clouds. It's 13 in Smith Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. No rest for the wicked. The federal party leaders back on the campaign trail hours after the final debate in this election campaign.
A week and a half left of campaigning in this election, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh trying to appeal to voters that they don't just have to pick between the Liberals and Conservatives, despite the fact those two parties are the front runners in this race.
But you're not stuck with those two choices. We put to Canadians, you have another choice. Better is possible. But if you want that, you've got to vote for it.
However, Singh facing questions and criticisms for not having the costing of his platform yet. We're just days away from voting day. He says Canadians know their promises and can trust them. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau makes an announcement this morning in Hamilton. Green Party leader Annamie Paul will be speaking in front of Parliament Hill, while Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is in Mississauga. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
10 days away is Election Day, but if you won't be around that day, or if you just want to get it over with, you can cast your ballot starting today at advanced polling stations. Carl Hanske's finding out if last night's debate made any differences for voters.
The vast majority of commuters I've talked to did not watch last night's debate. Some were distracted.
I was watching the tennis. Yeah, I was flipping through the tennis for sure.
Others wanted to watch, but
I fell asleep. I just fell asleep as soon as I got home.
Some refused to tune in.
It's always the same thing. No matter, doesn't matter who the politician is. It's always the same.
Those that did watch say it didn't really help.
And they were going back and forth. Not much debate going on, I think.
Did it change your mind at all or influence your vote?
I don't think so, no.
But for those who do know who they are voting for, advance polls are open today, tomorrow, Sunday, and Monday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Check your voter information card delivered in the mail to find your advance polling station. I'm Carl Hansky.
City News time is 10:03. One man in stable condition after an early morning shooting near the airport. Police found a man with gunshot wounds behind the wheel of a car. They were responding to a report of a collision on Leicester Street, that's near Bank in the Airport Parkway, around 2:15 this morning. The Guns and Gangs units of the Ottawa Police asking anyone with any information or dash cam footage, surveillance footage to come forward and provide tips to police or Crime Stoppers. And a city councillor has written an open letter to the mayor, calling him out of touch with efforts being done to combat rising crime in Ottawa. Diane Deans, also the chair of the Police Services Board and Crime Prevention Ottawa, tells Jim Watson that she has offered to provide a quarterly update from the board and the chief of police, but that he has denied those requests. She adds that Crime Prevention Ottawa and a number of city councillors have consistently advocated for better funding for social programs and infrastructure that would enhance community safety, but that in numerous budget cycles, the mayor hasn't stepped up to build trust and any confidence in city leaders. City News time is 10:04. Let's take a look at your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls today, we've got sun and cloud. For the most part, a brisk northwest wind, the high 21 degrees. Tonight, partly cloudy near 10. And for the weekend, warmer with a southwest wind. Rain moves in Saturday night. Tomorrow's high 25 will feel like 30. Some showers Sunday morning, but then some clearing, high about 23. For today, the high 21.
And I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
It's the Friday free-for-all here on the Talk Back Hour. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow today and into next week as well. Boy, we got lots to talk about, eh? Boy, did I sound Canadian there or what? Hey, we got lots to talk about there, eh? Hey, let's talk about things, eh? You know what? Anything goes. Maybe you want to talk a little sports. Listen, the NFL season kicked off last night. I still find it, it was strange to me watching an NFL football game with a full stadium last night. I don't know about you. I was like, where are the masks? I'm like nervous now when I see people without masks. Do you feel the same way, David?
Yeah, it's like a whole different world down there.
Isn't it?
I remember that from the Super Bowl last year and the college playoffs.
Yeah.
Just wild to see that many people
stadium
in one small space like that.
Yeah, they're not limiting capacity whatsoever. I mean, nobody's wearing masks. People are shouting, drinking their beers, spilling it on each other. My goodness. So if you want to talk a little NFL, listen, I'm a big football fan, so you can call in, talk a little NFL if you like. Canadian tennis phenom, Leylah Fernandez in the semifinal yesterday. What a pleasure. I mean, it was so difficult choosing what to watch. There are some tennis players. I'm a tennis fan. My mom was a big tennis player. My father loves the game as well, so I grew up Bjorn Borg was my favorite tennis player, still remains my favorite tennis player of all time to watch. But watching Leylah Fernandez last night, just so positive, and she's like basically dancing before every serve and just smiling and enjoying the moment. It was just so refreshing. And then you had the Toronto Blue Jays, right? 4-game sweep of the New York Yankees. A 4-game sweep at home. By the way, listen to this. The Blue Jays, 4-game sweep in Yankee Stadium. They move within a half game of the second wildcard spot. Hottest team in baseball did something that hasn't been done in 100 years. Thursday night, last night, they completed the 4-game sweep of the AL East rival New York Yankees at Yankee Stadium. The Blue Jays are the first team to sweep a 4-game series in Yankee Stadium without the Yankees holding a single lead in the series since 1926. That is crazy. Absolutely crazy. So anything goes. I know most of you want to talk about, of course, the debate last night. So let's talk a little debate because we've got some calls. I mean, the lines are lighting up here. This is exciting stuff. Let's head over we will start with Albert in Canada. Albert, what are your thoughts?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to make mention of what I saw yesterday that I thought was absolutely foolish.
Okay.
Another foolish photo op by El Trudeau and his clan. They visited the Ottawa hospital, and they were allowed entry into the Ottawa hospital for photo ops. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is that hundreds and hundreds of people were denied access to their loved ones this year while they were in the hospital. And yet, for some reason, Justin gets access inside a facility that's supposed to be as safe as possible for a photo op. It just shows how careless this person is. And like I say, my big thing with all this was hundreds and hundreds of people across Canada during the COVID and continuing today were allowed no visitors.
Yeah, no, Albert, you bring
in the hospital.
You bring up a great point. Now, I can tell you, what a little bit of background on that. He has stopped at a couple of hospitals, by the way, doing photo ops. He's been criticized, from not just yourself but others as well. Not exactly a COVID-friendly thing. The University Health Network in Toronto was fine with it, and this is per the Globe and Mail. The University Health Network's visitation policy during the pandemic excludes members of the public and says only patients with appointments and essential care partners, such as a family member and a friend, can attend the hospital. Mr. Trudeau on Monday said his team worked with the hospital to ensure public health measures were followed. He said he wanted to pay tribute to frontline healthcare workers.
Okay, well, if he wanted to pay tribute to frontline workers, okay, what he could have done, if he really wanted to do that, is he could have anteed up to the premiers 3 months ago when the premiers asked them for their top up on their provincial healthcare funds, which he denied again. Right. And this is a big problem. And you know what? These guys have been on planes. They've been the forests in BC were burning, and he's at a pub pouring drinks with people around. This whole entourage that was with him, I would say, were in high COVID areas and planes and large gatherings and everything else. I think it was a very poor, incompetent decision on Trudeau to use staff at a hospital for a photo op like that.
Albert, you know what? I agree. I mean, you bring up some excellent points. Thanks so much for your call. I will say as well, Kevin Smith, who is the president and CEO of UHN, that is the University Health Network, told the Globe and Mail on Sunday that the hospital's policy during the election is to welcome any political leader who wants to come and discuss healthcare issues. So, that is part of their policy, but Albert certainly brings up some great points, and appreciate the call, Albert. Let's move over to, let's go to Ottawa South. Michelle on the line wants to talk Trudeau. Michelle, what are your thoughts on Prime Minister Trudeau?
I have a lot of thoughts. I hope I get enough time to say them. First, I would just like to say her name and say thank you to Anna May Paul.
Yeah, yes.
You shattered the shield of phoniness like no other candidate has been able to do. The shield around Mr. Trudeau of phoniness. Thank you. Mr. Singh's line about the worst record. How can people trust you? Well, Natives should know better than to trust them. Afghanis should know better than to trust them. Healthcare workers and PPE should know better. Women should know better. Raj Sayed, or however his last name is pronounced. The two Michaels should know better. They know better than. By now, everybody should know better than to trust or believe Mr. Trudeau. So based on that, Mr. O'Toole won. Just based on the fact that the rest of the left is using our attack lines against Trudeau, we don't have to say it anymore. They finally see what conservatives have been saying for 7 years. Oh, remember that guy, Stephen Harper? He left us a balanced budget. He wasn't coming after your retirement income. Shame. Also, I agree with Lowell about Rosemary Barton. It's an example of our tax dollars working for the Liberal Party. And I wasn't going to even mention this, but Albert brought it up, and I'm going to tell you that during COVID, we lost 2 family members to brain cancer. My cousin was one of the women who died. Her daughter and son had to draw straws to go and sit with the mother and the father because they were allowed one person
Yeah,
to sit.
it was.
And it was only that one person that was allowed for the duration.
Heartbreaking.
Unbelievable choices.
No, I agree,
so
Michelle.
When he starts throwing around lines about leadership, Derick, it's more than stones I'd like to throw at him, because leadership, you should have sensitivity for all the families that have suffered and haven't been able to sit with their dying family. Shame on you. I don't care if the university or whatever. Once again, showing that an academic is not always the right way to go.
Michelle, I appreciate your passion, and I appreciate the call. Thanks so much for calling in. I will say, the comment of throwing more than just stones. Let's keep that out. I mean, that is disgraceful conduct. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to be better, right? We're all passionate when it comes to politics, but some of these protests turning violent, that's not. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's not the Canadian way, right? So just, words matter as well. So let's just be careful how we communicate as well during this election. I know everyone is incredibly passionate about their thoughts on the various leaders and so forth, but let's certainly keep it respectful. Hey, this is the Talk Back Hour. It's the Friday free-for-all. We can talk about anything. We've got one line open right now, so call in, 750-1310. We've got Steve, Sam, and Roger on the line. We want to talk debates and vaccine passports. I'm Derick Fage, filling in for Rob Snow today and all of next week. Again, that number, 613-750-1310. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The phone lines are open, 750-1310. You heard the lady. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow. We can talk about anything because it is the Friday free-for-all, my friends. Talk about anything. I'm game for anything. All right? Throw it at me. Let's talk about anything. I can talk anything. Hey, maybe you want to talk some sports? An exciting day in sports yesterday. You had your U.S. Open. Wow. What a match. I mean, just absolutely incredible. You had the Blue Jays in their 4-game sweep there last night. You had the NFL season kicking off as well. And, of course, the English language debate. And that's why our phone lines are lighting up, because people want to talk about the English language debate. Was there a winner? Was there a loser? What are your thoughts on last night's debate? Let's go to Steve in Ottawa, wants to talk about the debate. Steve, what are your thoughts on last night's debate?
Hey, Eric, how's it going?
I'm doing great, thanks. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I had Gronkowski in my pool last night, so I did all right there.
Nice. I had Tom Brady.
Right on. Anyway, so, about the debate, I had both on. I had the game on quiet and I had the debate on. One thing that really bugged me was this guy from Quebec.
Blanchette.
It's supposed to be the leadership of Canada. And this guy is talking about separatism and the nation of Quebec and everything else. They shouldn't give that guy the time of day.
It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Because
that guy shouldn't even be up there at all.
I don't disagree. I would almost like to see a separate debate, to be honest with you, with just the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the NDP.
Right.
Give them more time, too, right?
Right. The other thing that bugged me is, it seems like the Conservatives have to play by different rules than the other guys.
In what manner?
It seems like the Conservatives have to have everything costed out and a budget for everything, and the other guys can just take these pie-in-the-sky ideas and be like, yeah, drugs for everybody, free school for everybody, no problem. If the Conservatives are doing that, they'd be like, well, how are you going to pay for it? But it never comes up for them.
The Liberals do have some costing involved. I will say that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, their platform has absolutely no costing whatsoever.
Right.
It's easy to throw around ideas of, free money and groceries for everybody.
Right. $1 million for everyone. But
yeah.
It doesn't make sense. The only other thing I find the media too is as soon as O'Toole mentioned the tax on single home dwellings, whatever capital gains, they kind of shut him up right away. Oh no, don't say that. Well, this is what I want to know. Why is no one questioning Trudeau about that? That's what I want. That's what I want to know personally. I want to know if I sell my house, are they going to take half my money and I can't buy another house?
Yeah, well,
that's what a lot of Canadians want to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a caller yesterday was begging for media to talk more about this capital gains on your principal residence because it's a huge game changer, right, 100%. Steve?
Who would vote for this guy at that point who owns a house? Nobody. You can't buy another house for $500,000 if you're going to lose half the money you sell yours for.
Well, not only that, but there's a generation right now that's retiring and they want to sell their home and probably go into a rental as they downsize,
right. Or maybe help their kids get their first home or whatever.
Help their kids get their first home, and they need that money. They need that money for retirement, and they need that money to help their kids because we know that a lot of young people aren't going to be able to afford a house. That's for damn sure.
Oh, I just got one other thing. Okay. So people were complaining about the protests at the hospitals. The protests at the hospitals were actually organized by the Registered Nurses Association. So that hasn't been reported really in the media, and that's kind of dishonest in my opinion because they're like, oh, it's right-wing crazies. But apparently they were organized by the Registered Nurses Association. So that kind of takes the guts out of the crazy, unless they're all crazy right-wing conspiracy guys.
Yeah, but there are a lot of crazies.
Of course.
Let's be honest, Steve. We'll look into that, though. That's the first I've heard of that. Steve, thanks so much for your call. Much appreciated. Let's head over to Roger in Drummond, wants to talk about the debate. Roger, how are you this morning?
Pretty good.
Good. What are your thoughts on last night's debate?
Well, Derick, I thought, like I talked to my wife about it, it was kind of a breath of fresh air for us because it wasn't staged the way many debates have been in the past several years.
Okay.
And to give Erin O'Toole a chance to get his message across. Now, I know 45 seconds isn't enough to get your point across, but Erin O'Toole seemed to do a pretty darn good job with it. And the rest of them, like that other gentleman was saying, with pie-in-the-sky crap. Oh, yeah, we're going to go to a green environment, shut everything down. And like Erin O'Toole said, well, when we shut our oil and gas industry down, who are we buying our oil from? And our like Saudi Arabia, the bastion of democracy, and some of these other despots,
Yeah, I mean, we still, listen, we all want to move in a direction where we're less reliant, but, you can't just turn off the taps tomorrow. It's not going to work. It can't, we've got infrastructure around the world built around oil and gas, right?
Yes, but, we're going to get there someday. Like, humanity has always found a way to get through crises, from wars to pandemics to everything. And we're still here because we want to survive. And we know what changes we have to make, but we can't do it in 5 years, 10 years, or probably not even 50 years. But one of the things that I wish that Erin O'Toole would have said, because he did stick up for the oil and gas industry, but he should have just added one more thing, Derick.
What's that?
Like, if we want to be part of the solution in the world with our 1.26%
greenhouse gas emissions,
our contribution, well, places like India and China, who rely heavily on coal for their energy, well, we could send some of our ethically sourced, environmentally sound natural gas so they can eventually switch from coal to natural gas, and that would drop the emissions probably worldwide by probably about 40%. And then we're still going to get off of it eventually, but we have to learn how to walk before we run, and we can't sacrifice we sacrifice all our energy sector here in Canada, and then we have nothing. And is that going to change the emissions in the world? No, somebody else is going to fill that void, that little bit that it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a global solution, right? I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything. We should be an example to other countries, but this is something that has to, leaders from the major, I mean, you mentioned China, U.S. in there too, India as well. We have to get everybody on the same page or nothing's going to change. Roger, thanks so much for your call. Much appreciated. Let's take another call before we go to the break. Let's go to Sam in Ottawa. Wants to talk vaccine passports. Sam, what are your thoughts on vaccine passports?
Hey, how are you?
Hello, Sam, you there?
Oh, yeah.
No, I think I lost Sam. Or did I lose me?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, I can't hear anything. David?
Oh, no.
I don't know what happened. Hold on a second.
I'm still here.
Hello. Okay, Sam, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm back. How
are you?
I'm good, Sam. That was a user problem on my part. I got excited and hit my volume button, I guess.
So did I. It's my first time ever getting through.
Oh, really? Oh, excellent. First time caller. Sam, thanks so much for calling. So what are your thoughts on vaccine passports?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, how the small businesses are going to survive this, because really, like, from what I understand, like, there's 20% of people in Ottawa, let's say, that won't be able to go anymore, and that's 20% of possible customers. So I'm just really hoping that, something will happen or whatever, or they'll be able to keep their head above the water, because it seems like a lot of them are already shutting down around here in Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue, Sam. I've spoken to some small businesses that are saying, vaccinated or not, we are so desperate to have customers come back that we can't put that policy in place. And I think they're also doing this passport idea to encourage people to get vaccinated. I mean, we did see an uptick in vaccinations. But you bring up a good point, Sam.
Do you think that they're going to have an option to implement that or not, or is it going to be like they have to?
I think they're going to be forced to. There are some businesses that are saying they're going to go against it. I know that there's a couple of gyms in Toronto that have said that they're only taking unvaccinated clients. I wonder if it would come to that. I remember when the no smoking ban came into restaurants. Some restaurants tried to just do hey, we're a smoking restaurant. A restaurant I used to frequent quite often called Puzzles in Westboro. They're no longer there. But they actually started handing out membership cards. You paid $1 so that you could come into their smoking restaurant. It didn't last very long, but I wonder if that's going to be a situation that some businesses may try.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. But it should be interesting to see how it all unfolds. But I really do hope, because some of those businesses, that's their livelihoods, right? So.
Yeah, no, I agree, Sam. It's there's a lot to think about for sure. Thanks so much for your call, Sam. Really appreciate it. Glad you finally got through. We're going to take a quick break. This is the Talk Back Hour. It's the Friday free-for-all. We'll talk about anything, but you want to talk Trudeau. You want to talk Afghanistan. You want to talk capital gains tax. You want to talk sports. Anything. Anything goes. Steve Warne, by the way, coming up a little bit later on the show. We can talk to him about U.S. Open, NFL football, Toronto Blue Jays, and the Brady Tkachuk contract situation. Conflicting reports out there about how the contract negotiations are going. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow here on City News.
Local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September the 10th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, we have some partly cloudy skies, 15 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 14. Here's what's making news this hour. The province reporting 848 new cases of COVID-19 in its latest update. There are 52 of those cases in Ottawa, 21 in Eastern Ontario, 3 in Renfrew County. That's according to provincial reporting. The Leeds-Grenville-Lanark District Health Unit confirms 1 new case in their region. This from over 28,000 tests completed. 11 more people have died due to COVID-19. The official opposition wants to introduce legislation that would ban protests outside hospitals. This after recent anti-vaccine passport protests took place outside Canadian hospitals, which caused the number of patients to be either late for their appointments or additional frustration for burnt-out healthcare workers. The NDP's Andrea Horvath says a designated area would be around hospitals where protests would be illegal and Protesters would face fines. A man in stable condition after an early morning shooting near the airport. Police say they were called to a collision on Leicester Street near Bank and the Airport Parkway, where they found a 29-year-old man behind the wheel of a vehicle this morning with gunshot wounds. This happened around 2:15. An NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, says he disagrees with Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet, equating discrimination against Indigenous people to the treatment of Quebecers. During a campaign stop in the capital this morning, Singh told reporters the fact that many Indigenous communities don't have clean drinking water isn't the same as Francophones not being able to access some services or education in their own language. City News time is 10:33. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
You heard the man. Give us a call now. The number right there for you, 750-1310. This is the Talk Back Hour. It's a Friday free-for-all. Derick Fage here filling in for Rob Snow. We can talk about anything and everything, but most of you want to talk about the debate. We've got a caller who wants to talk about Afghanistan as well. So let's dive right in because our lines are lit up. So if you're trying to get through, just be patient. We want to hear from you. Be patient. Let's get over to Victor in Kemptville, who wants to talk about Justin Trudeau. Victor, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I'm a first-time caller.
Oh, thanks for calling, Victor.
When I go voting, it will be for one reason only. It'll be to get Mr. Trudeau out of there.
For what reasons, Victor? What are some of the top reasons?
He's still a school teacher, and he's still teaching us as dummies everything he knows.
How do you really feel, Victor? So you watched the debates last night. Did you? I guess you felt that Erin O'Toole was the winner last night?
Yes, I feel like he was the winner last night, but I don't know. Mr. Trudeau was frustrated because he wasn't getting his way and the students weren't listening. It's always been the same thing, and any money that's ever been given is always going to Quebec. Quebec are always getting more than their fair share.
Well, I mean, that's, you know what, that has happened with conservative governments, liberal governments. Nothing has certainly changed. What about your opinion on the moderator last night? Shachi Kurl, president of the Angus Reid Institute. I've heard, you know, some people thought she was great. I thought she was great, but some people weren't impressed.
I thought she was great, too.
Yeah.
Put him in his place.
Victor, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate it. All right, we've got a line open, so give us a call now. 750-1310. Again, Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. Let's head over to Mark in Ottawa. He wants to talk about Afghanistan. Mark, thanks for calling.
Hey, thanks, Derick. I worked there, 2009, 10, 11, and I worked at the embassy, and we had guards there. They guard almost every embassy there in Kabul.
Right.
And they're Gurkhas, which are they're an elite force, retired elite force from the British military, but they're from Nepal.
Okay.
Anyway, on the 20th of June, they're 2016.
Mm-hmm.
They were blown up. There was 13 of them blown up by a suicide bomber on a bus.
Okay.
And, our government's not giving them any compensation. It's just like, it's horrible.
Oh, listen, when it comes to veterans and compensation, Mark, I mean, I don't think it matters who has been in power. It's always been, disgraceful, really, right? It's one of the black marks on this country, right?
Unless you're Joshua Boyle, then they bend over backwards to help you.
Yeah, and the Afghanistan situation, which was brought up a little bit earlier, I believe it was Tim Powers that brought it up, was the fact that it was supposed to be sort of a subject that wasn't supposed to be brought up, and it was during the debate last night.
And I'm very happy.
Yeah, I was too. I was actually, it was I was pleasantly surprised.
Because his failure to even get, he's bragging about 3,700 people that he's got out of Kabul and Afghanistan, guess what? They're almost all, I think 1,800 of them are Canadian.
Right.
And there's only, the rest are Afghanis. And I mean, they risk their lives for us.
Yeah.
They're great people. And, the Taliban are not nice people.
You got that right. Yeah, I know. They're trying to say all the right things, but I don't think they're fooling anybody. We know exactly who they are. Mark, really appreciate the call. It's an important topic to continue talking about. By the way, actually, we have some clips from last night's debate on Afghanistan. Let's go to the clip with O'Toole and Singh on Afghanistan.
Canada should never leave behind people that are at risk because they helped us. When Afghanistan was falling, there were 1,200 Canadians and hundreds more translators and others waiting for help from Canada. What did Mr. Trudeau do? You called an election, sir. You put your own political interests ahead of the well-being of thousands of people.
Tragedy that was something we knew about. We knew about the withdrawal date. We knew from President Biden what that date would be. And sadly, I agree with Mr. O'Toole on this one point that it was a bad decision to call an election while this crisis was going on.
So, refreshing to hear some conversation. Trudeau did have a rebuttal on that. Let's hear from him.
It's unfortunate to hear the members, the leaders on this stage talking down the incredible work that our Canadian Armed Forces, that our diplomats, that our consular officials did from the beginning of the summer to ensure that as of the very beginning of August, well before this election, we were getting flights out of Afghanistan. We got 3,700 people out of Afghanistan. And over the past weeks, we've been working with the Qataris, for example, on exactly that good news that we've seen of more people, more Canadians getting out of Afghanistan.
So there you have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and of course earlier that was O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh talking on Afghanistan. Another subject that people want to talk about on the Friday free-for-all is the capital gains tax. Let's head over to Dave from Ottawa Centre. Dave, thanks for calling in this morning.
Hey, Derick.
Hi, Dave.
Two things. First thing, go Dolphins.
Nice. Yes,
capital
sir.
Gains tax. Yes. This is what I've kind of heard through the grapevine. There have been a few white papers floating around. Governments are certainly trying to investigate new methods of revenue collection.
Right.
Because you can only squeeze the taxpayer so many ways via their income tax every year. And as you know, we've accumulated these massive debts and deficits, especially over the last 18 months with the COVID crisis. So the way it would likely work is that the government, let's say the Liberals got elected. I know that many of us may not want to examine that notion, but let's say it happened. Then, presumably they would have to set a valuation day for everybody's principal residence. And for sake of argument, let's say that's December 31st, 2021.
Okay.
So everybody in the whole stinking country would have to come up with a valuation number for their principal residence.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that any capital gains that were accrued before that valuation date would be untouched, because you can imagine if they went back, if Granny bought her house in 1975
right,
for $30,000 and it's worth $800,000 today, you can imagine that $670,000 being subject to capital gains, even if her tax rate is only, her income tax rate's only 20%. That would be punitive.
Oh, absolutely.
So they can't do that. They know that people would be out on Parliament Hill with pitchforks if they tried that. But they will have to set a valuation day. And any capital gains that come into play after that valuation date would be subject to these capital gains. So,
well, and the reason it's not in a platform is because, Dave, it would be political suicide, right? You can't run on that. That's for damn sure.
Oh, no, this is only something I believe that a government could implement once they had a solid majority of 4 years where they were untouchable.
Right.
But believe you me, they are looking at it.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Oh, absolutely.
Granny sells her house, there's a valuation date. Let's say from the valuation date to a year later, her house increases in value by $20,000. Then, Granny has to pay a 20% tax rate. Granny has to pay 50% times 20% times 20,000. Granny's, chipping out. She's sending a check for $4,000 to Justin Trudeau based on the sale of her home.
Right.
It doesn't sound like the end of the world, but hey, Granny.
No. It's every little bit counts. Dave, thanks so much for your call. Really appreciate it. Let's head over to Betty in Ottawa, who wants to talk capital gains as well. Betty, how are you this morning?
Hi, Derick.
Hi, Betty.
I'm furious over this capital gains talk. It's been hidden too long, and it started 25 years ago when he did it with cottages. And now it's going to be our home. And what the guy in front of me just said is fine for seniors now to put an amount on them. But what about young people that are buying a house today? By the time they're seniors, they'll owe a fortune in capital gain.
Well, I think we all would. I mean, even yourself.
Of course we would. I mean, what's he going to do next? Go to the graveyards and start putting capital gains on our tombstones? I mean, this is.
I don't think they'll go that far, Betty. What I would wonder
on it. I mean, I suggested a month ago or 2 months whenever I phoned.
Okay.
What's wrong with taxing lottery winnings? If I won $1 million, I don't mind paying tax, but when I work for $1 million, I do mind.
No, you bring up a good point, and I don't know what the decision making on that is. Why they don't. Why they you don't pay taxes on? I know they do in the U.S.
Of course,
right?
And they don't. They're saving on their homes.
Maybe it's more of an incentive for people to buy lottery tickets. I don't know.
Yeah, but this will be a disincentive for people to buy homes, and who will want to buy them and rent them? They talked about, they're only going to do it on people that flip houses in a year. Well, I thought that if you flip the house in a year, you already paid tax on it.
And Betty, I mean, some people are making a living doing that, right? I mean, it's legitimately their job is that's what they do. They buy a house, they put in a lot of money, they renovate it, and then they sell it. It's a business, and now you're telling those people that you're going to tax them on it. If I was in that business, I guess I'd be pretty upset. And I wonder if a capital gains tax did, if it was rumored that it was actually going to happen, would people start selling their houses like crazy?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I would consider it. I'm going to be 52 years old this year. Part of our retirement plan is to sell the house and eventually rent and downsize, and that money would be used for retirement purposes.
Well, that's what most people are doing, but we didn't know Justin was coming on the scene. God, he's got to go. He's got to go, and they should all be asked what they are going to do about capital gains, because once it's planted, they're all going to be looking at it.
Well, Betty, appreciate your call. Thank you so much for calling in today. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll go through to the final segment of the Talkback Hour here on The Rob Snow Show. This is Derick Fage filling in. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews and the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work, it's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Hello.
On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Rob is off today. Derick Fage filling in. It is the Talk Back Hour, the final segment, of the Talk Back Hour. 750-1310 is the number. So give us a call. We have actually one line available at the moment. People want to share their opinions. Let's head over to Michael from Orleans, who wants to talk about the Liberals. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How is everybody today?
We're doing great. David and I are doing fantastic. Although at the Tim Hortons this morning, they were out of sausage and hash browns. Absolutely ridiculous.
Par for the course.
Yeah.
Two-time Trudeau voter here.
Okay.
And from what I saw at the debate yesterday, I'm flipping.
Really?
He seemed like an angry, punitive man that is, if he's ever called to task, and he has made mistakes. As a Liberal, we have to look in the mirror. We all have to look in the mirror as Liberals and say, wait a minute, is this what we wanted? Did we want a man who barks at people and gets rid of powerful women when they don't toe the line? This has been an unadulterated mess.
I'm glad you're sharing this perspective, Michael, because if you go back to, the previous couple of elections, he was telling people that, I'm just going to run on my platform and, no negative attacks. We're not going to do attack ads. Boy, that certainly has changed, hasn't it? And you know why? Because he's in panic mode, because he selfishly called this election during a pandemic, because he saw the polls were telling him that, that he was going to get a majority government, and now he's in panic mode because he's seeing that, the numbers aren't showing a majority anymore, are they?
Well, exactly. And I'll leave you for your next few callers, but what struck me when you talked about the positive campaigns he did prior, now it's very negative.
Yeah.
He's not his father. He's a small-minded, weak individual, and I am out of the Liberal Party.
Wow. Interesting, Michael, and I appreciate your honesty as well. I've mentioned, I have voted Liberal in the past as well. Certainly appreciate your honesty in sharing that. And there you go. There's people ask themselves, thanks so much for the call, Michael. People ask themselves, do these debates really make a difference? Does it really change people's minds? Well, there's an example right there, right? Michael watching last night and not impressed. Judy from Ottawa wants to talk Justin Trudeau as well. Judy, how are you this morning? Hey, Judy, are you there? Oh, there we go. Hey, yeah. Judy.
I don't think the people in this country have any perception in their brain, because they all wonder why Trudeau called the election. They can't see what he's going to do if he gets in. He's going to sneak his dictatorship in. He's wanted that for years.
Well, every let's be honest, every single party wants a majority government. It just makes governing easy for them. I actually thought that a minority government during this pandemic was actually the best government, because we're spending, billions and billions of dollars, and it puts you in a position where you have to negotiate, and there's other parties that are there that are watching the checks and balances, and you have to do you actually have to work with the other parties. It's true democracy.
No,
right?
No, but he's different. He's got it in his blood. He's a revolutionist.
A revolutionist? My goodness.
His father's Fidel Castro, his real father, Margaret Trudeau's love child.
Okay. Judy, thanks so much for the call. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
If the people who want the cheap child care, $10 a day deal, they better not think their kid's going to get quality care. Trudeau's going to get the cheapest workers there to look after them. So they don't think they're going to win with that situation when their kids finish in those $10 a day jobs.
Judy, appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Let's try to get some more calls in here. Adam from Smith Falls wants to talk capital gains. Good morning, Adam.
Hi, Derick. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you this morning?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Excellent.
So I just wanted to, a counterpoint on the whole capital gains on your primary residence.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it.
The one thing I do find is that, when we're talking about homeowners tend to be in a category kind of above a lot of people, in that they've actually been able to afford a home.
Right.
When you look at the large group of people these days who just cannot afford a home, any way that they're saving money either in their RRSP or they're saving money in their TFSA. And if they have extra money that they want to grow, they're not putting it into any kind of a registered account, and they're paying tax on that.
Right.
So when you're looking at a home as an investment, why do we have two different sides of the coin here, where someone who's got a home isn't necessarily paying tax on their investment? I'm a homeowner myself. I'm not super crazy about it, but you're basically just creating more of a wealth gap for people who are wealthy enough to afford a home versus the people who aren't.
I see where you're coming from, Adam. I think, the other perspective is, I don't understand why we are so addicted to home ownership in this country. When you look at Europe, for example, very few people. It's such a small percentage of people that actually own a home. Why are we addicted in this country? Why don't we want to rent? And as you said, there's other ways of investing your money instead of real estate.
Totally agree. I'm on the side of, I think we need to kind of move our whole system away from this absolute need to be homeowners.
Yeah, I agree.
With the way the market's going. Anyways, I'll leave it there. That was my 2 cents, and I just wanted to bring a slightly different perspective.
No, and I appreciate it. You brought up some great points, Adam. Really appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Let's head over to David in Canada. Wants to talk about polling. David, what are your thoughts on polling?
Oh, not polling, polls.
Oh, polls in general. Yeah. Okay.
I just got my notice today, and my poll is 7 kilometers away from where it normally is.
Oh, your polling station?
Yeah, because they're probably not doing them in schools and churches and all those places, so they've had to pick new locations.
Interesting. I received mine yesterday. I didn't even look at the. I should have looked more close. I didn't even look at what my polling station was. I just assumed it's probably the school that I always go to in my neighborhood. So I'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah, mine moved from 0.3 kilometers to 7 kilometers. So.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a fear that voter turnout isn't going to be very good, David. And, I think even, the Liberals in particular, if you look at the demographic that a lot of the demographic that votes Liberal that they count on is a younger demographic for sure. And you've got some of that younger demographic, gone back to university and college, right? They're just a couple of weeks in. They're trying to, get themselves settled and so forth. And then they're going to be asked to, run out and put their vote in on Monday, September the 20th. And I just think it's terrible timing for an election, quite frankly, for many reasons.
True, but everyone else has done it. The states have done it. Provinces have done it. Lots of other countries have done it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to keep a close eye on voter turnout. I mean, I certainly know there's mail-in ballots as well and advance polls as well. So it'll be interesting to follow that. David, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And David brings up a good point. Have a look at that card and see if your polling station location has changed. All right, well, that does it for the Talk Back Hour. We'll be back, of course, on Monday for another Talk Back Hour from 10 to 11 o'clock. Coming up after the break, David brings up polling stations. Well, we're going to talk polls because Polly, I don't know if you've heard of Polly. I was listening to Rob talking about this. This is basically a machine that has successfully predicted previous elections, has a 100% success rate. We're going to find out from Polly what the numbers show and say about the English language debate last night. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. You're listening to City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, September the 10th. Good morning. I'm Chris Curries. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy skies, 15 degrees. It's 14 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Another jump in Ontario's COVID-19 case count, with the province reporting a number in the 800s today. This as we see 52 cases in Ottawa, 21 in Eastern Ontario, 3 in Renfrew County, and 1 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. Alex Bloomfield joins us with more on that and a breakdown of today's data.
848 new cases today reported by the province, up about 40 from last Friday and yesterday. But the overall trend in new cases continues to slow across the province, upward trend that is. The 7-day rolling average ticking up slightly today after falling for the last 3 days. Hospitalizations down slightly overall to 361. That includes those outside the ICU as well. Vaccinations reviving slightly when it comes to first doses. A little over 35,000 shots reported today in the last 24-hour period. About half of them now coming as first doses. Ontario's overall number is now slightly over at 84.1. From Alex Bloomfield.
The federal party leaders back on the campaign trail hours after the final debate in this election. Our Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney has more.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau making an announcement in Hamilton, which is a city he's visited a couple of times before in this campaign. It's considered one of the battlegrounds of this vote. We have a week and a half left of campaigning in this election. And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh trying to directly appeal to voters, saying they don't have to pick between the Liberals and Conservatives, despite the fact those parties are frontrunners in this race.
But you're not stuck with those two choices. We put to Canadians, you have another choice. Better is possible. But if you want that, you've got to vote for it.
However, Singh facing questions and criticisms for not having the costing of his platform yet, as we're just days away from voting day. He says Canadians know the promises and can trust them. The price tags will be released tomorrow. Later today, Green leader Annamie Paul speaking about her party platform in front of Parliament Hill. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole making an announcement in Mississauga. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
The economy bouncing back to pre-pandemic levels as 90,000 jobs added last month. Stats Canada says overall employment within 156,000 jobs, or 0.8% of the level recorded in February 2020. That was before the onset of the pandemic. It's the third consecutive monthly rise and the closest this country has been to recouping all the jobs lost during the first wave. One man in stable condition after an early morning shooting near the airport. Happened around 2:15 this morning. Police say they were called to a collision on Leicester Street, which turned out to be a shooting. It's near Bank in the Airport Parkway. They found a 29-year-old man behind the wheel of a vehicle with gunshot wounds. Guns and Gangs unit asking anyone with any dash cam footage, security camera information to come forward. Anyone with information has to contact police or Crime Stoppers. They're also searching for a suspect who injured a store clerk during a robbery last week. The incident happened on Walkley Road the morning of August the 30th. Police say an unarmed suspect entered a convenience store and demanded cash. The suspect injured the employee during an interaction and made off with an undisclosed amount of money. There's a full description of the suspect on our website, ottawa.citynews.ca. Now let's take a look at your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls today, we've got sun and cloud. For the most part, a brisk northwest wind, the high 21 degrees. Tonight, partly cloudy near 10. And for the weekend, warmer with a southwest wind. Rain moves in Saturday night. Tomorrow's high 25 will feel like 30. Some showers Sunday morning, but then some clearing, high about 23. For today, the high 21.
Right now in Ottawa, 15 degrees, partly cloudy, 14 in Smiths Falls. I'm Chris Curries. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob today. Another hour ahead, you lucky listeners, you lucky viewers. Another hour ahead here on the Rob Snow Show. We got lots to talk about. We're going to talk a little sports in just a few minutes with Steve Warne. We're going to find out, his thoughts on that U.S. Open match last night. I know. I can't say enough about it. Just an incredible match last night. But we want to talk polls. And I know Pauly has been brought up with Rob on the show previously. I was listening in. It's not a traditional pollster. Pauly is an artificial intelligence system built by an Ottawa-based startup called Advanced Symbolics. And I am joined by the CEO of Advanced Symbolics, Erin Kelly. Erin, how are you today?
Great. Thanks, Derick.
Oh, it's a pleasure having you. And I know you're probably sick of answering this question, but for those viewers and listeners tuning in for the first time and do not know what Pauly is, maybe you could just give us a summary and explain what Pauly is.
Yes, absolutely. So Pauly was developed in partnership with the University of Ottawa to do university-level research on social media. And what I mean by that is she is able to get a representative sample, so to understand the underlying demographics and psychographics of the population she's measuring so that she can do predictive market research, or in this case, polling.
And how successful has Pauly been?
She's been incredibly successful. So just to give you an idea, in the last federal election in 2019, Pauly had forecast 155 seats for the Liberals, and the Liberals won 157. So well within the margin of error. Same thing for the Conservatives. So she not only can tell you the popular vote, but exactly how that will translate into seats.
Incredible. It's just amazing. So what does Pauly have to say about last night's debate?
Well, here's what's interesting. So while the popular vote right now still favors the Conservatives at 33.6% versus 31% for the Liberals, and that translates into seats. After last night's debate, the Liberals went ahead of the Conservatives in seat count. So we have right now 137 for the Liberals versus 134 for the Conservatives. So still neck and neck. It's still only 3-seat difference, but it was enough to put the Liberals ahead because going into it, the Conservatives were still ahead.
It's fascinating because can you imagine the Liberals end up with another minority government? I mean, this country is going to just pull their hair out. $600 million later, we still have a minority government. Fantastic news. So is there a regional breakdown on that? Like where are they picking up those seats?
Yeah, so it's where they're picking them up really in Ontario.
Okay.
That's where now Ontario is complicated because there's a lot of swing ridings in Ontario as well, but that's really where the battlefield is. Alberta's going Conservative. British Columbia is a total mix. It's a rainbow. Quebec is, the Bloc Québécois is fighting the Conservatives for seats in Quebec, so the Liberals are really running away. They're coming up the middle, especially since Monsieur Legault told people to vote for Erin O'Toole or hinted that was his preference.
Right.
A lot of Bloc supporters are now going to the Conservatives, and the Liberals are coming up the middle.
That's interesting. And does Polly look at issues as well, like separate issues?
Yes, absolutely. And she looks at the issues and she looks at whether or not they favor or which parties they favor. And that's another reason why the Liberals are coming up, because daycare is really important and people prefer the simplified $10 daycare to tax breaks, which, you know, people don't really enjoy the tax breaks. They don't feel that answers the issue. Also, vaccine passports, and the protesters, which kind of goes hand in hand with that, is really favoring the Liberals because they see Justin Trudeau standing up to hooliganism, and they don't see Erin O'Toole doing that. They see Erin O'Toole saying, well, you know, I believe in I believe in vaccination, but I'm not going to make my own MPs do it. And so they see him as more on that side of not pushing vaccination.
Right. What about, did Polly look at any of those 5 themes that they had there last night? Affordability, climate, COVID-19 recovery, leadership and accountability and reconciliation. Are there any numbers as far as those themes go?
Yeah, so we look at those things that they're asking. We also do with Polly what's called topic discovery. So she actually ranks what people are talking about, what is getting the highest engagement among people talking about the election. So those issues were there.
Right.
They're just not necessarily there they were all there. So the top thing that people care about right now is the economy, but number 2 is daycare. So that's really interesting. Like that comes ahead of climate and Afghanistan, at least right now. And then vaccine passport and mandatory vaccination, those types of issues are next. And then after that, we get into cost of living, Afghanistan, climate crisis. So climate is number 7 in the issues that people are talking about.
Okay.
Online, but that's what's really interesting about Polly is you can see what I call it the people's platform, right? What do people care about as opposed to what academics care about?
Well, at the end of the day, right, when we go in to vote, I mean, let's be honest, we all vote selfishly. You know, what party's going to give me, right, the best living? And you know, there's also, you know, morals and values that are in there as well, but a lot of it comes down to economics as well. The media seems to think that O'Toole won the debate last night. Does Polly tell you that as well?
No. What we see, well, you know, what we actually see, I think, is people were liking it or disliking it according to party lines. And Mr. O'Toole does have the popular vote. So like I said, about 33% favor him and 31% favor the Liberals. So, but when we break it up according to how people already feel, you know, you're preaching to the converted. We didn't feel that anybody made a lot of inroads. Mr. Trudeau was already starting to trend upward before the election. So it doesn't look like the election really changed things the debate really changed things substantially. There wasn't a clear winner last night. We saw that Mr. Trudeau had both more enthusiasm from people and also more anger because we were able to run an emotion classifier against it. So he was more polarizing than the other candidates, but he also got more engagement.
Very interesting. So I guess it's fair to say most voters are decided at this point.
It's starting to be baked, but the problem is we still have a lot of swing ridings. So anything can happen. I mean, Jody Wilson-Raybould's coming out with a new book next week.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I wonder if that's going to change some things. And, hats off to her. Like, great timing. Thank you so much for this timing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure it's timed, and you've got to think it's not going to be flattering for the Liberals.
No, certainly not. So when will Polly sort of make her I imagine it goes right up until, voting day, that she's going to make sort of her final decision where she says this is what's going to happen in the election.
Yeah, exactly. We look for stability in the numbers and stability in ridings. And so we're not seeing it yet because there are only 3 seats ahead and there's a lot of swing riding, so we can't call it yet. We will, as we get closer, we start to ask probably about 3 days before, can you call it? Can you put people in different buckets and decide who's going to win these swing ridings? I want to wait until Jody Wilson-Raybould comes out with her excerpts from her book to see if that has an impact before we before we try to call the election.
Outside of elections and this sort of, that sort of thing on every government level, does Polly, like, what other purpose does Polly have?
Oh, yeah. Well, so most of our work, in fact, has nothing to do with elections. We don't we don't work for political parties or anything like that. We do this more for the fun. Our work, we've got 2 contracts on COVID tracking. So we look at the wastewater data, and so we've got a contract with the Ontario government and the federal government, and the federal government's all pandemics. So we look at the wastewater, and then we trace through our mobility tracking how the virus is likely to spread in the coming weeks, and that's been extremely successful.
What numbers are you seeing recently?
I'm under NDA on that one, so I can't talk with those, unfortunately. Yeah. But we've got a lot of we do a lot of work in electric vehicle. Same thing with our mobility models. We do a lot of work in pharma, healthcare, because we got our start in healthcare, so we do a lot of work there. And of course, just typical consumer brand market research.
Amazing! What just incredible technology, Erin. Thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Derick.
That was Erin Kelly, CEO of Advanced Symbolics. Polly, just an incredible tool to use. Coming up after the break, while this politics I love, and in my wheelhouse, I also love sports. And if you love sports, wow, last night was just an incredible night. You had the U.S. Open going on, the NFL kicking off, the Blue Jays on a 4-game sweep of the Yankees. And we're going to talk some Ottawa Senators as well. There's some conflicting information out there about how the contract situation is going with Brady Tkachuk. So we're going to hear from Steve Warne, veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster and host of the Sens Nation podcast. Coming up next, this is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic. But we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly. But it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did. But I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us. But we thought, we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food. And we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and had the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, Again, everything is from scratch, but we have like from combos and to like small sandwiches. Our one of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here filling in. What a night last night. I mean, I wish they would have picked a better day for the English language debate, because you had the opening of the NFL season, Bucks versus Cowboys, goes down to the last seconds, I should say. U.S. Open, Leylah Fernandez, incredible just to watch her. Just amazing. You had the Toronto Blue Jays getting a 4-game sweep. And then on Twitter, you've got the Sens, Ottawa Sens sickos going nutso over this Brady Tkachuk contract, conflicting reports from different media sources. Here to help us break it down, Steve Warne, veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster and host of the Sens Nation podcast, joining me. Steve, how you doing?
I'm good, Derick. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. What a night for sports last night. Where do we start? I think we have to start with Canadian Leylah Annie Fernandez and the U.S. Open. Do you have a chance to watch any of that last night, Steve?
Oh, I sure did. Yeah, it was. You're right, though. Boy, our attentions were certainly divided as sports fans. I'm not sure Canadian sports fans are going to be too well armed with knowledge about the federal leaders. Not a chance to watch too much of that, because that was way low on my list of priorities as a sports fan. But yeah, that was a special night. Watching Fernandez through these last 4 matches that she's had, just one tough opponent after another.
Yeah.
And she's just, I've never looked forward to a women's final more than I am this one, to see an 18-year-old taking on a 19-year-old, both of them unseeded. That's going to be a pretty special matchup. And Fernandez is just, she had a win earlier this year, but she has just absolutely skyrocketed, as her opponent, Emma Raducanu, has. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and she's so refreshing to watch. You know, she's like bouncing around. She's almost doing this little dance before each serve. She just, the positivity and energy from her, and the crowd absolutely loved her there at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, the poise that she has been phenomenal. And, you know, I was thinking after it was all over, Derick, and that Naomi Osaka, who's the number 1 player in the world, she's talked quite a bit over the last couple of months about pressure from the media and the questions. And you can see how she has a point. Like right after the match, Fernandez has to give a long one-on-one on the court, and then TSN does one. Then the ESPN desk grabs her, and then she has to do the press conference. And, like, they're not tennis questions. They're asked, you might as well have to get on the psychiatrist's couch. How are you handling all this intense pressure? What's your mental state? What's this moment mean to you? Were you emotional? Like, I'm kind of getting what Osaka is going after, but boy, she is so good. Fernandez and Raducanu, they both are so young. their poise on and off the courts is just through the roof.
Yeah, agree, Steve. Let's move on to Brady Tkachuk. This contract situation where we're getting conflicting reports from media. Sean Simpson reporting that contract negotiations are not going well. And then you've got Bruce Garriock reporting that negotiations are ongoing, and Pierre Dorion saying that the negotiations are ongoing and they're positive. I mean, who do we believe? The Sens sickos are losing their minds, Steve.
I say that you take it all with a grain of salt, because when you're talking about speculation from the media, some of it is coming from great sources who may be spinning the story for their own good.
Right.
And I think at this stage of the game, you have to kind of look at the big picture, and I think there are more reasons that he might sign a bridge deal than a long-term one. But these are all just reports at this stage of the game, and until Brady Tkachuk arrives in town with a contract in hand, you just don't know. I just think the bridge deal just makes more sense when you look at his brother Matthew in Calgary. He signed a bridge deal for a 3-year contract. There's probably a wait-and-see attitude with the Tkachuk camp. They have the same agent, by the way, as Mark Stone, J.G. Pageau, and Erik Karlsson. So we know how their UFA or their free agencies turned out. So I think that that doesn't mean it can't happen. An 8-year contract is still there. It's just about Tkachuk and his love for Ottawa, his love for his teammates. There's so much camaraderie and chemistry. I think that is the one thing that should give Sens fans some hope.
Yeah, agreed. What do you make of the Pierre Dorion contract extension? I think, it was certainly welcome as far as he's concerned, with Pierre Maguire, sitting in the background there waving and saying, hey, Pierre, love to take your job someday down the road. And is it good for the franchise, Steve?
I think it is. I was surprised by it a little for all the reasons you just talked about. And it's not because I think Dorion's done a poor job or anything. It just seemed like the signs all pointed to a changing of the guard. When you hire a guy like Pierre Maguire, and that's a guy I talk to every morning on my radio show for about 20 years. Yeah. I really felt like if Pierre Maguire was going to uproot and move to Ottawa and his family and all that to join the Sens, it was going to be for a GM job. And I mean, that still may be the case someday, but it's not happening anytime soon. And I think if anybody has any problems with Dorion, they might just look at the record. Like if you lived in a vacuum and you didn't know what the Sens have been about these last 3 years, you might say, well, why is a guy who hasn't been to the playoffs in 4 years getting a long-term deal like this? Let's be honest, the last 3 years have been destruction by design. And I think Dorion's been a pretty good steward of that. His amateur scouting has been immaculate as always. So I think he's mostly done a good job, and I think it's good for the team.
Let's turn our attention to the CFL for a moment. The Red Blacks, boy, oh boy, they do not look good. I mean, they're turning to Dominic Davis, which, I'll pat myself on the back. I said that they should be doing that when I spoke to Ken Avrer on the Sam LaPrade show. But I think they had to, Steve. I mean, Nichols has just not looked good at all.
Well, I think it's the lesser of two evils for sure. I think that Dominic Davis is an upgrade. I don't know what's going on. I mean, they keep saying in Red Blacks land that Nichols' health is good, that he's all the way back from that shoulder injury. But I think even Paul LaPolice has now come to terms with the fact that something's going on. Because the zip on the ball just isn't there. So Davis is an upgrade. He's got more zip on the ball. And you need to be able to run right now because that Red Blacks offensive line is so young and inexperienced.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, I mean they need a quarterback that can get out of the pocket. There's no doubt that he's going to be running for his life quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the reality is right now, it's so much pressure on Davis, so it's a different deal. You look at this guy. This was a guy they thought could do it 2 years ago, and his stat line shows. I think it was 5 touchdown completions and something like 14 interceptions on the year. So that was not a very good run. Maybe he's improved. He looked so much better than Nichols in the last game. So hopefully he is an upgrade and he can take them somewhere. But, I mean, really, Derick, since Trevor Harris walked off the field after the 2018 Grey Cup, the Red Blacks have been a bad football team because they haven't found a player capable of being a starting quarterback.
Should have never let him go. Never let him go. Let's talk about the hottest team in baseball. Steve, the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, crazy run that they're having right now. And, this 4-game sweep of the Yankees, I think, they're half game out now. I mean, exciting time for baseball fans here in Canada as well.
No question. And that's a big surprise. I honestly I wasn't totally done with the Jays. as far as writing them off for the playoffs, it's funny what an 11-1 run can do for a team and what they did to the Yankees. Like, that was almost historical. I was looking at a stat about the Yankees. They lost 4 straight at home against the Jays. So losing 4 straight at home while never holding a lead, that's the first time the Yankees have ever done that, like in over 100 years.
Yeah, since 1926. I looked that up earlier. Crazy.
Yeah, just stomped them. 25-8, they outscored them in the series. And, so they're still a half game back of the Yankees right now in the wild card race. And they have 23 games left now to try and land that thing. It's just, my worry is like, okay, you're not going to do much, but you can't keep this run going too much longer. Yeah. It'll probably even out a little bit, but at least they position themselves so that Blue Jays fans are going to have a really interesting stretch run to watch.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's going to be really exciting. It's almost like it's playoff baseball for the Blue Jays for the rest of the season, right?
Oh, no question. Yeah, I mean, you've got the Red Sox are in the mix. Oakland and Seattle's hanging around, so they're going to try and crash the party. So it's absolutely playoff baseball at this stage. You can't afford to go on even like a 3-4 game losing slide, because that could take you out of things very quickly, because there's a lot of good teams competing for that last spot.
Agreed, Steve. Always a pleasure talking sports with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Derick. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too. That's Steve Warne, veteran Ottawa sports broadcaster and host of the Sens Nation podcast. By the way, check out his podcast. It's absolutely fantastic. If you're an Ottawa Senators fan, you're in for a real treat. Coming up after the break, it's time for the Queen's Park Review. We're going to talk a little Ontario politics. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 10th of September. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, 16 degrees, 16 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. More than 800 new cases of COVID-19 today in Ontario. The province says 52 of those are in Ottawa, 21 in Eastern Ontario, 3 in Renfrew County, 1 new case in the Leeds Grenville Lanark District Health Unit. 11 more people in Ontario have died from COVID-19. The official opposition wants to introduce legislation to ban protests outside hospitals. Recent anti-vaccine passport demonstrations outside of hospitals caused some patients to be late for appointments and caused additional frustration for burnt-out healthcare workers. An early morning shooting near Ottawa's airport has wounded one man. It happened around 2:15 this morning when a 29-year-old man was found in a vehicle on Leicester near Bank and the Airport Parkway. Anyone with information or dash cam footage is asked to contact the Ottawa Police Guns and Gangs Unit. Scientists are studying how humans carry a cup of coffee without spilling it. Might sound goofy, but there is a reason for it. Arizona State University researchers want to study how humans handle their double-double so they can then design smart robots that may eventually need to handle complex objects with applications in other fields. Innovative robots who learn from the coffee study could actually one day keep us healthy. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here filling in for Rob today. And boy, oh boy, do we got lots to talk about. The Queen's Park Review coming up right now. And of course, the legislature has been prorogued, as you all know, so we're going to get some opinions on that, and of course, talk some vaccinations, talk about back to school, Truth and Reconciliation Day, September 30th, but Ontario is not making it a stat holiday. These are some of the things we are going to discuss today, and we are joined, as usual, by Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins. Good morning, Gilles.
Good morning.
Great to have you. John Fraser also joining us, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Derick.
And Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough-Kawartha. Welcome, Dave. Great to have you here.
Good morning.
Good morning. So Doug Ford prorogues the legislature, and let's start with you, Dave, MPP Smith. Can you explain the decision?
Sure. It's a very logical thing. We're going through an unnecessary federal election right now, and all of the platforms that have been put forward are dramatically different, and they'll all have an effect on Ontario and what our legislative agenda should be as we move forward in the fall. So we're taking a slight pause so that we can get some certainty on what's going to happen at the federal level. That way we'll know what kind of financial commitments there are from the federal government so that we can tailor what our agenda is going to be based on that information.
I mean, it makes sense as you describe it. Not everybody feels the same way. Let's find out, Gilles. What is your opinion on this? On what's your position on this move?
Well, I want to give Dave congratulate him. That's the best spin I've heard in a long time on this issue. So you did a good job. Listen, it's pretty simple. There's a federal election on. Dave and I will agree there shouldn't be a federal election. I think Mr. Trudeau made an error in the middle of the fourth wave through this pandemic calling an election, so him and I will agree on that. However, the reason why the government prorogued the House is the government provincially as Conservatives are somewhat offside with the federal Conservatives. And Mr. O'Toole and the federal Conservatives don't need a question period going on, debates going on in the legislature where Conservative members will have to get up and defend what the government is doing, and some of it is pretty logical. Nobody's going to argue we shouldn't be doing some of the things that we're doing in Ontario when it comes to vaccine mandates, all of that kind of stuff. And so they're ducking. Mr. Ford was in hiding. Now he's going to hide his cabinet for the next little while and come back after the election. It has little to do with what the next government's going to do. It's about what this government does to help its federal friends.
Yeah, and going into the school season, back to school, I wonder if it's poor timing as well because there's some big health concerns and issues. John, what is your thoughts on that? What's your position on this?
Look, the legislature's sat through many federal elections, so I don't buy what Dave's selling. Really what's happening here is the Premier doesn't want to be in public. He doesn't want to answer the tough questions. The legislature's there to make all of us, the Premier, myself, Gilles, Dave, accountable. And there are a lot of things that are in front of Ontarians right now to deal with the pandemic, like vaccine mandates, like what are we going to do about those protests that we're seeing in front of hospitals that are so discouraging to our healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of things that we should be talking about there that the government needs to answer to.
that we have to answer to as legislators. And most of those deal with vaccines, vaccine passports. Why are we 2 months behind everybody else? Are we going to be on time? This government reacts, and our role as opposition is to push them to act. And delaying that by 4 weeks just isn't good for anybody.
Dave, is there?
Derek, I got to weigh.
Sure.
I gotta weigh in on that.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
For a second, because there's a couple of misguided comments on it to imply that we're not accountable, that we're not in front of the media. I'd like to point out that Premier Ford is the Premier of Ontario. He was in Northern Ontario. He was on television. He was on the radio in Thunder Bay. Just because the Toronto media doesn't have direct access to him, there's an implication that we're hiding. The reality is, this is the government of Ontario, and we're out across Ontario. I'm on your show right now answering questions. That demonstrates we're not hiding from the media. We're actually out in front of the media across Ontario. And to suggest that Toronto, that it's not Toronto media, that we're somehow hiding. The world is much bigger than the city of Toronto. Ontario is much bigger than the city of Toronto. And Premier Ford is the premier of this entire province.
Well, I'm touched that you're paying attention to Northern Ontario. As a Northerner, we always welcome that. But this is spin. That's all it is.
I am the parliamentary assistant to Northern Development.
That's good.
Hey, Derek, we might need a break because I know that Gilles and I are getting dizzy.
There's no breaks for you, John. Come on, this is a political talk show.
The Premier has been in one scrum answering reporters' questions. One scrum in 6 weeks. We used to see him every day.
Right.
Come on, that's not hiding. By any objective measure.
Dave,
one scrum in Toronto,
we have a parliament. We have scrums all across Ontario with other media. And in smaller markets, yes, absolutely, because he's been out there showing he's the Premier of Ontario.
I wonder, Gilles, I'll throw this at you, and then we can get other opinions on this, but I wonder, is there any surprise that why isn't he coming out and showing his support for Erin O'Toole with an election campaign? Is what's the reason behind that, or what do you think the reason is, Gilles?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm not surprised, and I think that the answer is pretty simple. They're both conservatives. They both have the similar ideology. But Mr. O'Toole has taken a very different position on the pandemic things and a few other things than the provincial government has had to take. Mr. Ford started out, he didn't want to do vaccine passports, and I understand his logic. There's a lot of people who are upset with that, and, we need to react to all of Ontario, not just one group. And so there's a need for the provincial Conservatives not to be raining on the federal parade, because if all of a sudden there was a question period or the Premier went to press conferences every day, he would be asked the questions that need to be asked around these issues, and it would put the provincial Tories in a really difficult spot when it comes to not helping their federal Conservative friends.
John, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I'm not sure why the Premier's essentially in hiding. But here's the thing that's really important. There are so many things that we need to be talking about because we are in an urgent situation. We're in a pandemic. We should be talking at Queen's Park about, what's our plan to vaccinate 5 to 12-year-olds when that comes online? Are we going to be ready? Because are we going to use primary care? Because when we launched vaccinations last year, we totally ignored family doctors.
Yeah,
right? How come we're not making vaccines mandatory for frontline educators and healthcare workers in this province, and forcing every organization to go through the same debate when we know it's the right thing to do? We should be there talking about that. I don't care about the federal election and how the Premier feels about it or Erin O'Toole feels about it.
Dave, what do you think on that? Are you surprised that he's not giving any support to Erin O'Toole, or is this part of the strategy?
Both of my esteemed colleagues here have been in government themselves, and they recognize that you have to work with the government of the day, whoever it is federally.
Oh, absolutely.
With the NDP, it was not an NDP government federally when they were in. With Mr. Fraser, it was a combination of a Liberal government and a Conservative government who were in power while he was in government. And you have to appreciate that you need to work with whoever the government is of the day. So we need to be positioning Ontario in a place where we're able to work with whoever it is that our federal partners are. And we've demonstrated throughout this that we have been willing to work with whomever our partners are, because that's what's in the best interest of the people of Ontario. That's what
try working with the opposition.
Our mandate is to do what's right for the people of Ontario, and that's what we're doing. With respect to we have to be at Queen's Park in order to do this, or we have to be at Queen's Park in order to do that, I'd like to point out that we did implement the vaccination certificate policy while we are here in our ridings. It is possible. I know this is something that may come new to Gilles and John, but it is possible.
I understand the rules of the legislature well, my friend.
At Queen's Park. As you're making legislative changes, sure, you have to be there in order to pass a bill. But when you're making regulatory changes, it's the government that does that, and that's what we've been doing. That's what we're able to do. And we're able to do it in a way that actually helps Ontario.
John, you brought up you brought up vaccinations and the protests outside hospitals. These anti-vax protests. What can or should government do about this, in your opinion?
Well, I look, they have to do something. Just saying come protest us, don't protest the hospitals. It's not enough. There needs to be stronger messaging about how wrong this is. Number one. Number two, and I think I'll give this to Gilles and his leader, the opposition are going to put forward a bill that talks about safe zones.
Yes,
I think
that's right.
Thing. That's something I can support. That's something we have to do. It's simply wrong for this to be happening at our hospitals. It's the wrong thing for the people who are going to the hospitals. But it's even more wrong for the people who worked so hard and taken so many risks to keep us safe. And so, that's another reason we should be back at Queen's Park. That's what we should be debating. That's what the government should be taking action on. But instead, it's just words.
And Gilles, obviously you feel the same way. These safe zones around healthcare facilities, I guess it would give more police more power to remove protesters, correct?
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to do. Listen, first of all, everybody in this country has a right to disagree with what a government is doing. And part of that right is being able to protest in legal ways, in ways that are not going to harm anybody. And I respect that. I think we all understand that's what democracy is all about. But we're starting to get into an area where healthcare workers are feeling rather uncomfortable doing their jobs, getting to work in order to do the things they got to do to care for people with heart attacks, people with cancer, broken limbs, and yes, people with COVID. And so when emergency, technicians, nurses, etc., and others who work in a healthcare system are being protested in that way, you're really discouraging them from going to work, and that's counterproductive. So there needs to be something that says, listen, you want to protest, go somewhere else, do it in a legal way. You have the right to express yourself, but don't do it in a way that's going to intimidate our healthcare workers, because that will affect the ability to sustain our healthcare system.
I have to take a quick break, but I would like to get your opinion on that, Dave. So when we come back after the break, I'll throw it to you on that issue. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow here on Rogers TV and City News. We'll be right back after this.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, it's got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying, and then I shut my business down for I think a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here filling in for Rob, and we are in the midst of our Queen's Park Review, the second half of our Queen's Park Review, joined by Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough-Kawartha. And we were talking anti-vax protesters outside of hospitals. What should or can the government do about this? Gilles and John having their say on it. Dave, what can the government do, or what should the government do, if anything?
Well, first off, I can't make a comment on the legislation or the bill that the NDP have suggested they're going to put forward, because they haven't shown it to us yet. So I'll have to leave that one aside for the moment.
Okay.
Really, what we're talking about, you hear a lot of people who have been talking about their privileges and their rights. And I think that we need to be changing focus and talking about what our obligations are and what our responsibilities are. And absolutely, someone should be able to have their say, should be able to object to something. But we have to recognize that these frontline healthcare workers have done yeoman's work all throughout this pandemic, and they're the ones who are keeping people alive, not just with COVID, but with other things. It could be cancer, it could be an emergency, it could be that there was a car accident and someone's coming in. And when you're making it difficult for them to do their job because you object to one aspect, you're harming so many people.
So then what to do? So then what to do, Dave? Because John and Gilles brought up a good point, saying, it's okay, it's all fair and good to say, hey, please don't do it, but that's obviously not working.
The avenue to protest is with your elected officials. We're supposed to be your voice. So tell us what it is that you need. Tell us what it is that you're having a challenge with. Talk to your MPP. Call your MPP. Send them a letter. Send them an email. Protest out front of the MPP's office. Yeah. Get the message to the person who's going to be conveying your message. Don't be going out and obstructing healthcare workers that could be saving your husband, your wife, your daughter, your son.
Would you? Yeah, that's a question I had. Would you support that legislation to create safe zones once you see it? Would you support it, personally support it?
I haven't seen it, so I can't make any comment on it.
Well, of course you can. Of course you can. What do you think of the idea of safe zones around healthcare facilities that would give police more power to remove the protesters? You can have an opinion on it without seeing it.
It really depends on what they've got in it. They could very well be saying we'll have a safe zone here, and we're also going to include a double-double for everybody who gets it.
Come on.
Without knowing what's in the legislation, I can't give you a blanket statement.
Dave, don't mock it. We do have safe zones around abortion clinics. That's something that was established and increased by the last government. There is a precedent for it. What's happening at hospitals is wrong. So either you want to create a safe zone or not. That's all you have to say. Do you want to create a safe zone in a hospital?
I agree with you that what is happening at hospitals is wrong, but I can't make any comment on the legislation until I see what the legislation.
Will you create a safe zone? That's the question. Yes or no?
This is like the debate last night of nobody answering a question, Dave. Come on now.
Yes or no? That's all. It's that simple.
Again, John, I have to.
Okay, well, we'll wait for you to see it, and then next week we can follow up.
Policy. You can say yes or no.
Gilles, can you send that to Dave, please?
Yeah, we'll do that now.
Yeah, we'll follow that up next Friday. That'll be great. Let's move on to something else. Let's talk schools. Everyone. Students back in school. 5 cases were found in Ottawa's French language schools that went back last week. Gilles, I'll put this to you: Are schools safe? Do you feel confident with students back in school with the health and safety protocols that have been put in place by the Ontario provincial government?
Yeah, and I think also school boards have done a fairly good job of trying to, as much as possible, given the situation, to make schools safe for kids. So what's clear, kids want to be back at school. My grandkids are just excited to be back. I was a kid who used to go to school and hated it. These kids are just so glad to be back, and so are their parents. But are we ready? No, there's still some things that need to be done. You saw the reports in the papers this morning. Class sizes are 30 to 40 people in a class. That's too much in a COVID world. The ventilation systems has been improved. Dave will talk about that, I'm sure. But we still have almost 2/3 of our schools that need ventilation, who are not going to be done until sometime next year if they get that money. So there's a number of things that need to be done that still should be done. But we're doing better than we did last year, and let's hope we don't see what's happening in the United States here in Canada.
Yeah, no kidding. John, what are your thoughts on safe schools?
Look, families are happy kids are back at school, but they're anxious. And educators and school boards are working with what they have. They need more support.
Such as what? What kind of support, John?
First of all, we're making every board go through making vaccines mandatory for frontline educators. We're making them go through that debate. When the provincial government, all they had to do was take that stand and make that move, and they didn't. We still have challenges with ventilations. We have large class sizes, larger than we want. So, that's why we need to be at Queen's Park, because we have to raise these issues. It's not just about legislation and government implementing things. We have to say to the government, here's what parents are saying and feeling. Here's what families need. That's why we're there.
Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the fact that you found 5 cases of COVID right off the bat demonstrates that our protocols are actually working, because these are not cases that they would have had as transmission in the school. They haven't been to school long enough yet for that. These are cases where it was community transfer of the disease. We caught it, and that's what those protocols are in place to do. We have implemented a massive amount of HEPA filters for all of those schools that don't have mechanical ventilation. Anywhere that there is mechanical ventilation, we have upgraded them. I can speak specifically to my board. 1,400 HEPA units are going into the 1,392 classrooms that did not have it. There are only 1,392 classrooms without it. So we're seeing that happen at all of the boards across Ontario. The boards have come to us and said, here's what we need for resources. Here's what we need to make this safe. And we provided them the funds for it. Over $6 million
if you speak to the school board trustees across Ontario at their association level, they will tell you still the majority of their schools that need to have HVAC systems upgraded are not upgraded because, first of all, the federal government did not give the amount of money that the province needed. I'll give Dave, some cover on that. But the province did not do what it had to do, and they're telling us there's a lot of schools that are not going to have HVAC systems even by next spring. So that is a problem.
And they're getting HEPA filters into it.
We've done some. Listen, there's been probably about $20 million spent in my riding alone. But my point is, there's still a ways to go.
I have a question for Dave.
Sure.
Dave, in January, your education minister said we will be able to do 50,000 tests a week in schools. So in the few months that schools were open, you did a total of 64,000 tests, not per week, but in about 8 or 9 weeks of school, you did just a little more than you said you would do in 1 week.
Someone pouring themselves a beer over there?
That's why we need to be at Queen's Park.
It's interesting that you bring that up, too. Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up because we were following the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And let me give you a quote from Dr. Moore about rapid tests. He said, it's a tool. It's a tool that we'll use wisely.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to leave it at that. Whoever's pouring themselves a beer, well, you're prorogued right now, so you can work from home and enjoy that. That's fantastic, gentlemen. A real pleasure having you on the show. Looking forward to talking to you next week.
Everybody have a good one.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody. That's Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, and Dave Smith, PC MPP for Peterborough-Kawartha. All right, that does it for me. Sam LaPrade coming up next. I'll be in all next week for Rob. Rob is taking another week off to relax and enjoy himself. I'll be back, and don't forget our Talk Back Hour. It's going to get juicier and juicier as we get closer to voting day. That's right, going to the polls on Monday, September the 20th. Sam LaPrade up next here on...
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.